Chapter 1261. With that, he turned and strode out of the ward. Yi Yu looked at the candy in front of her and felt a little strange. This is, from Li Jinnan. It really doesn't match his image. But he had come all the way from Kingstown just to give her a candy. As she thought about it, Yi Qianqian picked up the candy on the blanket. TSK, a candy from 1,000 miles away. It's a small gift, but it means a lot. He even paid off all your medical bills. Yu, why do I feel that your boss seems to be interested in you? Yi Qianqian raised her eyebrows and smiled sinisterly. This man is not bad. He's handsome and capable, and I've never heard of any scandals. He's a good man. If you can win him over, it'll be good too. Don't talk nonsense. I'm already married. Yi Yu looked unhappy. Eat the candy if you like it. I don't like this kind of child stuff. This marriage of yours, other than getting a marriage certificate and earning some heartache, what else does it have? If you ask me, that be *tch Shenluo and isn't good enough for you. Yi Yu didn't say anything. She slowly closed her eyes. When Yi Qianqian saw that, she felt that she was asking for it. She shut her mouth resentfully. She placed the candy on the counter and said, I'll put my friendship here. I'm going out to make a call to my friend. Okay, Yi Yu replied without opening her eyes. Yi Qianqian's footsteps faded away. When the door of the ward was closed, Yi Yu opened her eyes. She turned her head and looked at the candy wrapped in beautiful colorful paper. She reluctantly reached out and grabbed it. With great difficulty, she took it out and examined it for a long time. After confirming that it was just an ordinary candy, she felt a little disappointed. I thought there would be a small note inside. Otherwise, would he really come all the way just to give me a candy? That's too strange. After thinking about it, Yi Yu wrapped the candy up again and placed it under her pillow. When Li Jinnan walked out of the ward, he realized that his face was burning. Why do I feel like I'm a thief? Uncle, are you going to coax a girl? If a girl is in a bad mood, she'll feel better after eating something sweet. Here, it's for you. To actually listen to a little brat's words, really, Li Jinnan was speechless. When he recalled the strange look in Yi Qianqian's eyes, he felt even more embarrassed. That woman is Yi Yu's sister, isn't she? After some thought, he took out his cell phone and called Yi Yu's cell phone. Yi Yu had placed her cell phone by her side. When she heard it ring, she turned her head to look at it. The name Mr. Li was particularly eye-catching. Reluctantly, he picked up the phone, put it on speaker, and called out, GM Li, what's up? Yes, I'm going to sign the contract now. I'll handle your matter, but it might be a little late. You just need to focus on recuperating. So it was just a meeting to sign a contract, so, visiting her was just on the way. Strangely, Yi Yu felt a sense of relief and replied, Thank you, GM Li. Gratitude doesn't come with words. Actions were needed for everything. Before Yi Yu could reply, she heard him say, I'm hanging up. Then, there was the sound of the phone being hung up. The ward was quiet again. Chapter 1262. Yu Lily chatted with Yi Qianqian for a long time before she hung up the phone. After a few days of fun, Yu Lily was in a very good state. She turned on the digital screen and painted until she couldn't keep her eyes open. Then she climbed into bed and went to sleep. The next day, at about 8:30, the doorbell rang. Yu Lily was sleepy. She went to the door and saw it was Ming. Ming looked a little handsome today. He was wearing a burgundy suit that he hadn't seen for a long time. The scars on his face seemed to have healed a lot. He looked energetic and happy. Seeing Ming, Yu Lily was full of energy. She quickly opened the door and asked, "Why are you here?" Oh Ming squeezed in and raised his eyebrows. "Did you forget what you were going to do today?" As he spoke, he took out a dark purple book from his coat pocket. It was a household register. Yu Lily's eyes widened. "Did you steal it?" "Shoo, go and wash your face. Look at the saliva on your face." Oh Ming reached out and wiped her face with a smile. Yu Lily subconsciously touched her face. Her cheeks were burning, and she quickly walked inside. But when she looked in the mirror, she found that in addition to looking a little sleepy, there was no trace of saliva on her face. "You lied to me." Yu Lily picked up the toothbrush angrily, squeezed the toothpaste, and began to brush. After changing clothes and putting on makeup, Yu Lily went out and found Oh Ming sitting in her room, looking quickly at her digital screen. He had just painted it last night. It was a sex scene. Yu Lily was embarrassed. She quickly covered the screen with both hands and shouted, "I'm done. Let's go." Oh Ming looked up and looked at her with a faint smile. "Good painting." Yu Lily glared at him fiercely, but her face turned red. She roared, "You touch other people's things without their permission. You're so annoying." Yu Lily's eyes widened, and her face turned red. How could it be other people? Oh Ming stood up and took her in his arms. "Soon you will be my wife." Wife? Yu Lily's mood was almost flying. He held her in his arms and quickly walked out of the room. "Wait. Let me get something." Yu Lily shook off his hand and looked at his face. "Do you want to put on some makeup to look more handsome?" "No." Oh Ming bluntly refused. "Go get the things." Yu Lily's lips curled up, and she turned around to find her household register and identification card. There was only one person in her household register. Soon, this household register would be scrapped, right? When he arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau, there were many couples coming and going. Without exception, all of them held hands and were affectionate with each other. However, there were also people queuing up at the divorce window, looking at each other with dark faces. It was the first time for Yu Lily to come to this place. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, it was their turn. The whole time, Yu Lily was a little confused. In the end, when he stamped his handprint and received the 2 red booklets, he was still in a daze. Oh Ming looked at her confused face and unconsciously curled his lips. He quickly bent over to kiss her on the cheek and said, "I'll look at it when we get home." Yu Lily carefully put the marriage certificate in the deepest compartment of her handbag. After zipping it up, she looked up. Her delicate face was full of smiles that could not be concealed. "Let's go eat." Chapter 1263. Hearing the change in the way he addressed her, Yu Lily's lips curled up even more, along with her mood. "Let's go for French food, shall we? Your wife will pay the bill." Yu Lily had always liked what Oh Ming liked, but she had never been willing to go to such a luxurious place to eat. Looking at Yu Lily's smiling face, Oh Ming held her in his arms. His lips curled up as he leaned forward with a wicked smile. In a low voice, he asked, "Do you want your husband to be a gigolo? He's so handsome. It would be a pity not to be a gigolo." Yu Lily raised her eyebrows, and her eyes curved into a crescent shape. "Let's go, gigolo. Let's go eat." Oh Ming chuckled and was pulled outside by her. However, just as Yu Lily was about to take a taxi, Oh Ming pulled her and said, "You drive." Yu Lily was slightly surprised. "You drove here?" Oh Ming smiled without saying a word and looked not far away. Yu Lily followed his gaze and blinked. It was a flamboyant red SUV, the Jeep that Yu Lily had always liked. The lines of the car were tough, and the car model was handsome. The red Jeep drove toward them, and the driver quickly got out. Yu Lily recognized him at a glance. Isn't this Su Qing, O Ming's most capable assistant? Su Qing quickly walked in front of O Ming and said, Master O. As he spoke, he had already handed over the keys. O Ming took the keys and handed them to Yu Lily. In a soft voice, he said, a wedding gift. Do you like it? A wedding gift. There's a wedding gift. Yu Lily smiled and looked at the keys, but she didn't take them. She said, but I don't want it, O Ming. She married him and didn't want him to give her any benefits. O Ming's mother probably didn't even know that they had gotten married. If she knew, wouldn't it be another disaster? I'm afraid not. O Ming shook his head and forced the keys into her palm. I can't drive with my hands, and I'm blind. Before I recover, you have to drive for me. Are you marrying a wife or a chauffeur? Yu Lily glared at him. When she heard that, she seemed to be a little unhappy. O Ming smiled and pulled her in the direction of the car. He said, I want both. My wife has to know how to drive. Otherwise, how will I be comfortable in the future? When Su Qing heard this, his serious face collapsed a little. His cheeks turned red, and he coughed softly. Yu Lily finally reacted. She elbowed him gently and said in a low voice, Are you a hooligan? O Ming looked a little innocent. He shrugged and smiled helplessly. What are you thinking about? Your thoughts are too corrupt. Yu Lily was even more embarrassed. She pushed him away, grabbed his car keys, and ran to the driver's seat. Su Qing watched them leave, then went to take a taxi and went back by himself. When they arrived at the revolving restaurant in Kingstown Tower, Yu Lily and O Ming found a table by the window. The place was very quiet. O Ming watched Yu Lily order food, then got up and went to the bathroom. Yu Lily sat alone by the window, looking at the distant ground in front of her. The sweet feeling in her heart made her face stiff. But this feeling is so good. Ding dong. A soft sound rang out not far behind him. Chapter 1264. The bright red roses, the color of the fire, were so beautiful that they made people intoxicated. Yu Lily was stunned. She looked up and saw O Ming's devilish face at a glance. With a smile on his face, O Ming stuffed the bouquet in his hand into Yu Lily's arms and said, Here, take it. Yu Lily held the large bouquet of roses in her arms and blinked her eyes. O Ming smiled and leaned down to kiss her lips. He whispered, Is it beautiful? Yu Lily smiled brightly. Biting her lower lip, she nodded and asked, Where did you get it from? I said it was a transformation. How can I tell you? O Ming lowered his head and kissed her lips again. Yu Lily subconsciously looked around, and her cheeks blushed. In the end, she closed her eyes and responded softly. However, her left hand was suddenly held by O Ming. A cold feeling slowly climbed up from between her ring fingers. Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat. She opened her eyes and subconsciously wanted to look at her hand. As soon as she moved her hand away, O Ming's lips fell on her cheek. But the corners of his mouth were even wider, and a pair of deep peach blossom eyes looked at her. They were like dots of stars, bright and gorgeous. Yu Lily looked at the diamond ring on her finger. The familiar pattern, the familiar lines. This was clearly the design that O Ming had drawn in the study. Is it very familiar? O Ming gently stroked her ring finger and whispered, This is called the most love. The most love. Her nose was inexplicably sour, and a wave of heat rushed up, catching her off guard. Yu Lily's eyes were red, and she looked up at him. I started preparing a few years ago, and you only gave me this opportunity now. You are too cruel. O Ming's voice was full of resentment, laughter, and indescribable gentleness. There is one more. Oh Ming opened Yu Lily's palm and placed a small cold circle on her palm. It was a man's ring. It matched the women's ring on Yu Lily's hand. It looked tough, but it was very beautiful. Oh Ming reached out his injured left hand toward Yu Lily. He stretched out his hand and looked at Yu Lily with a smile. Come. Yu Lily helped him put the ring on. He held her hand in his and kissed the back of it. Honey, let's eat. We'll go home after that. Yu Lily looked at him with sparkling eyes and nodded. Yes. When the dishes were served and they finished eating, Yu Lily and Oh Ming went downstairs together. Perhaps it was because they were in a good mood, or perhaps it was because they were getting married today, but both of them were dressed exceptionally well. Many people were looking at them. After looking at Oh Ming's face, they looked at Yu Lily's face with envy in their eyes. Yu Lily went down to the garage to get her car. After she drove the car out of the garage, she was a little confused. Going home at this time. But where was their home? Which home should he return to? Oh Ming turned his head, raised his eyebrows, and asked, "What's wrong?" Yu Lily turned her head and smiled. Now, where are we going? Let's go home, back to our home. Then, where should I go? To our new house, of course. Drive straight ahead. New house. A new house that only newlyweds would have. Yu Lily's face turned red. She started the car, stepped on the accelerator, and drove in the direction that Oh Ming had indicated. The location of the new house was very quiet, but the location was not remote at all. Chapter 1265. Am I going to be Li Xiqing's neighbor in the future? Is the new house here? Yeah, Oh Ming answered, pointed to the back, and said, "Drive inside." Yu Lily listened to Oh Ming's words and quickly drove the car to a villa that covered a large area and looked very grand. The entrance was very big, and two new iron doors that looked a little retro were opened from the inside. Yu Lily drove the car in, and as soon as she entered, she saw a big front yard. There were 2 flower beds in the front yard. Yu Lily parked the car in the open space next to the flower beds and then got out of the car. It's so beautiful. It was spring, and the flowers were in full bloom, bright and beautiful. In the middle of the 2 flower beds, there was a wide avenue. Let's go in. Oh Ming took her hand and walked straight inside. Yu Lily looked at the big and empty villa and felt a little strange. It was much bigger than the villa in Xishan where she used to live. Su Qing came out of nowhere and shouted, "Master O, madam." As he said that, he opened the door. As for Yu Lily, she was lost in thought when she heard the word madam. Madam. Is he calling me? After entering, Yu Lily found that the decoration inside was also the style that she liked. It was simple and elegant, but it had everything that should be there. It had a strong modern minimalist style. Inside the house, it seemed that there was an aromatherapy, and it smelled very good. It was also the jasmine fragrance that Yu Lily liked very much. We will live here in the future. Do you like it? Oh Ming took her hand and whispered with his head down, "I have been preparing for a long time, and I can finally move in." Is this also something that you have been preparing for several years? Yu Lily looked at him, a little incredulous. Oh Ming smiled but did not speak. Looking around, he saw that everything had been branded with Yu Lily's mark. The car and the house were all bought in Yu Lily's name. However, there was no need to tell her this. Let's go, I will show you. The villa was divided into 2 floors. The first floor was the living room, the kitchen, the dining room, the bathroom, the gym, and the balcony. The second floor was filled with rooms. There was a study, a master bedroom, a second bedroom, and a guest room. The place was very spacious. Oh Ming pulled Yu Lily into the room. The walk-in closet was especially large. It was comparable to the room that Yu Lily was currently living in at Yi Qianqian's place. The room was so big that it was empty. The bathroom was twice the size of the one in the West Mountain Villa. Especially that jacuzzi, it was huge and wide. Yu Lily looked at the huge bathtub and blushed. But she quickly lowered her head and turned her face away so that Oh Ming wouldn't see her strangeness. Oh Ming had already seen it. He chuckled and said, "In the future, we can be happy wherever we are." Yu Lily blushed even more and walked out quickly, pretending not to understand. She went to the room. It was a 2-meter diameter giant bed. The main color of the room was red and white, which Yu Lily liked. It looked bright and energetic. It was very comfortable. Everything was prepared for her. How nice, the villa was very big. It took Yu Lily nearly half an hour to walk around. It's such a big place. Are we the only ones living here? Yu Lily looked at him and asked, "Don't you think it's a little empty?" Chapter 1266. The Yushio villas were famous in Kingstown. The people who could live there were either wealthy or respectable. Li Xiqing had bought a villa there a long time ago and moved in early. After returning from a trip, he stayed in the old house for a while, but not long after, he returned to Yushio Villa. Su Qianxi was leading a few children to recite ancient poems in the living room. The 3 children were a little interested and recited along with her. Nanny Rong watched them from the side with a kind smile. Ding dong. The doorbell rang, and the children looked over. Li Jianyue immediately got up and shouted, "Mommy, I'll go open the door." The smile on Nanny Rong's face deepened. She pushed the little girl back down and said, "I'll go." "You sit down." Li Jianyue immediately sat down again and shouted, "Thank you, Nanny Rong." "You're welcome. Ursu has to learn poetry from Mommy." "Yeah." Nanny Rong looked through the peephole and was surprised to see Oh Ming. She quickly opened the door and shouted, "Madam, Mr. O is here." Oh Ming and Yu Lily walked in hand. When the two of them walked in together, the children's eyes lit up when they saw them. Li Jianyue got up and ran toward Oh Ming, shouting, "Uncle O." Oh Ming squatted down with a smile and reached out toward Li Jianyue, intending to catch her. But Li Jianyue stopped when she was about to reach him. She looked at Oh Ming's hand and asked, "Uncle, is your hand not healed yet?" Oh Ming smiled and pinched the little girl's pink cheek. "It's not that fast, but it'll be fine soon." Li Jianyue nodded and blinked her big eyes. "Uncle, you have to get better soon. Auntie, you're here too." With that, she went up and took Yu Lily's hand. She looked at the ring on Yu Lily's hand and exclaimed, "Auntie's ring is so beautiful." Yu Lily smiled and squatted down. "Thank you, Ursu." Li Jianyue smiled and pulled Yu Lily to the sofa. "Mommy, big brother, come quickly." Su Qianxi looked at the little girl from afar. It was obvious that she was trying to avoid reciting poetry. She shook her head and said, "Go and call your father out." "Oh." The smile on Li Jianyue's face widened. She immediately let go of Yu Lily's hand and strode inside. But when she ran, her pink spring dress fluttered, and she shouted in a sweet, childish voice, "Daddy, Daddy." The little girl's voice faded away. Li Mosin and Li Jianqian also got up and ran to the kitchen. Nanny Rong was making tea for the guests. Seeing the 2 boys running in, she couldn't help but ask, "What are you 2 doing?" Li Jianqian came over and said, "Granny Rong, give me the tea. I'll bring it over to the guest." Li Mosin said, "I'm here to get some snacks for the guests." Nanny Rong poured the tea, but she did not give it to Li Jianqian. Instead, she gave it to Li Mosin and said, young Master Mosin is the older brother, so he will be more careful. Young master, you can take the snacks out later. Li Jianqian felt a little regretful, but he also nodded. Okay. Not long after O Ming and Yu Lily sat down, they heard a tender voice coming from inside. It was slowly coming out. Chapter 1267. Hearing the little girl's words, Su Qianxi turned around and looked at the father and daughter coming out. Li Xiqing walked out steadily with his daughter in his arms. When he heard Li Jianyue's words, he smiled and nodded. Then I'll talk to your mother. Whether you can succeed or not, you have to rely on yourself. I heard that. Su Qianxi pretended to look over with a straight face. She looked unhappy and said, my daughter actually said bad things about me. How do you think Mom will punish you? When Li Jianyue heard that, she quickly covered her mouth. She looked at Li Xiqing pitifully and shouted, Daddy, save me. Li Xiqing walked over with his daughter in his arms, pinched her little face, and whispered, I'll help you later. When Li Jianyue saw how secretive her father was, she quickly nodded her head and carefully turned to look at her mother. She covered her little face and went into Li Xiqing's neck. She whispered, Daddy, you must keep your word. Don't be fooled by Mommy's honey trap. The little girl thought that her voice was very low, but at the same time, O Ming and Yu Lily both laughed. Li Jianyue was shocked. She turned her head and found that they were all looking at her. Li Jianyue stuck out her tongue and looked at Su Qianxi timidly. She found that she was also looking at her. Her little heart jumped, and she quickly climbed down from her father's body. She ran over to her and shouted, Mom. Su Qianxi pretended to be unhappy and turned her head away. Li Jianyue quickly climbed over to the other side and held her arm, shouting, Mom. Su Qianxi looked at her this time. Li Jianyue pouted and leaned toward her. She said vaguely, Kiss me, but before she could kiss Su Qianxi's mouth, her line of sight was blocked by a big palm. Her little mouth packed a rough palm. Li Xiqing picked her up and threw her to the side of the sofa. He said, Go play with your brothers. Li Jianyue was a little unhappy and pouted. Just at this time, Li Mosin came out with a tray. There were 2 delicate and beautiful cups on the tray. Just behind Li Mosin, Li Jianqian also came out with 2 plates of snacks and put them on the coffee table. How sensible. Yu Lily looked at their children enviously and said, They should be 5 years old, right? Yes, Daisu and Ursu are 5 years old, and Mosin is 6. They are not children anymore. Su Qianxi looked at them with a smile. Compared to the past, Su Qianxi's face had more motherly radiance, but her face looked more delicate and beautiful. Nanny Rong brought 2 more cups of tea and a few glasses of juice for the children. She said, Mr. O, I heard you were injured. Your eyes? O Ming smiled and said, Well, it was just a few days ago. Nanny Rong, please sit down. I have something to say. Yu Lily put the gift box on the table and looked at O Ming. She already knew what he wanted to say. Sure enough, O Ming took out a red booklet from his pocket. The words marriage certificate were written on it, and it was displayed in front of them. Seeing this, Li Xiqing's deep and narrow eyes flashed with a bright smile. You've finally made your move. Your mother agreed. No, I acted first and reported later. O Ming carefully put the marriage certificate in his pocket and said, If I told her in advance, she probably wouldn't agree no matter what. Chapter 1268. Of course not. O Ming denied it without hesitation. I want to talk to my parents after I'm done with the matter at hand. His mother had a strong opinion of Yu Lily, so much so that even O Huijin and Wen Fenglin couldn't resolve it. If this continued, Xiao Xiqing would have to think things through if she wanted to accept Yu Lily. That possibility wasn't impossible, but it was too low. Based on Qiao Ziqing's insistence over the past few days, Ming guessed that the main reason they were stuck between them now was because of Yu Lily's background. If they could find Yu Lily's biological parents, things might change. I think your father will be very angry about such a big matter. Li Xiqing had known Ming since they were young, so he was very familiar with Huijin. The uncle looked kind, but he had a bad temper. If he got angry, he might even hit someone. My father is easy to deal with, but my mother is the key. Ming sighed. Let's just let nature take its course. Su Qianxi saw that the topic had become a little heavy. She looked at Li Jianyue, who seemed to understand, and whispered, "Follow brother to the room to play." Li Jianyue blinked and nodded obediently. Then, she took Li Jianxian's hand and said, "Brother, let's go inside to play." Li Jianxian had never been able to do anything with his sister. After leading Li Mosen and his sister inside, he said, "I'm going to read. You two play." Li Jianxian was happy when she heard that. She waved her hand and said, "Go on, go on. I'll play with Brother Mosen." Li Jianxian didn't care and turned to leave. Li Jianyue closed the door and said excitedly, "Brother Mosen, let's play that game." Li Mosen frowned and said reluctantly, "No, it's just the two of us. I'm always down there. It's tiring. I don't care. If I'm down there, I'll be crushed by brother. Lie down. Hurry up." Li Jianyue urged him and pushed him toward the bed. Li Mosen was like Li Jianxian. He was helpless toward this little girl and didn't know how to comply. After thinking about it, he still lay down. Li Jianyue pushed him so that he was lying on his side and said unhappily, "You should be lying down like this." As he spoke, the little fellow climbed onto Li Mosen's body. His chubby little body was pressed against Li Mosen's. It was very meaty and very comfortable. Li Mosen asked helplessly, "Are you done?" Ursu was a little excited. She straightened her little body and shouted, "I'm done, push me down." Li Mosen leaned to the side and Li Jianyue's small, fleshy body fell to the other side of the bed. The little guy's body fell down and he giggled excitedly. He shouted, "Again, again." Li Mosen leaned over, and Li Jianyue did the same. After a few times, Li Jianyue's interest did not diminish at all. Instead, she became even more excited and shouted, "Brother Mosen, let's do it again." "No, I'm so tired," Li Mosen refused. "You'll crush me to death like this." Li Jianyue pouted her pink little mouth and looked at Li Mosen with a pitiful look. She said, "It's the last time." Li Mosen looked at Ursu's little face and finally softened his heart. He warned, "It's the last time. Okay." Chapter 1269. However, just as Li Jianyue climbed on top of him, the door to the room was opened. The two little guys on the bed were so scared that they shivered. Li Mosen quickly turned his body and Li Jianyue fell down. Then, both of them turned their heads at the same time. Li Jianxian walked in with a book in his hand. When he saw their big reaction, he felt a little strange and asked, "What are you doing?" "Brother." Li Jianyue got up and looked at Li Jianxian. Her face was full of accusation as she said, "Why didn't you knock on the door when you came in?" "That's so rude." Li Jianxian laughed. "This is my room too. I'm entering my own room. Why do I have to knock on the door?" Li Jianyue's pink face suddenly turned red. She said, "If there is someone inside, you should knock on the door. Don't you have to knock on the door when you enter Mom and Dad's room? How can that be compared? Mom and Dad are husband and wife. You are brother and sister." Li Jianyue's heart was stifled. She felt even more uncomfortable when her brother said that. However, she just felt that what her brother said was wrong. It was wrong. However, she couldn't tell what was wrong. It was as if there was something that had to be said, but she didn't know what to say. This feeling was too uncomfortable. The little fellow snorted, turned her head, and shouted, "I don't care about Big Brother anymore. Big Brother is always right." Li Jianqian walked in with the book in his arms. He took off his cotton slippers and climbed onto the bed. He said, "That's because what I say makes sense. You can't refute it, so you feel that what I say is right." When Li Jianyue heard this, she was even more unhappy. "But what were you doing just now? Why did you look like that?" "We were playing a game of chasing you off the bed." When Li Jianyue heard this, she immediately smiled and shared it. She said, "Brother doesn't play with me every time, so Brother Mosen and I created this game. It's so fun." "It's not fun." Li Mosen immediately retorted. "It's not fun at all." Li Jianyue put her hands on her hips and puffed out her chest. She shouted, "It's fun." Li Jianqian looked at the two of them yelling at each other. He pursed his lips in disdain and said, "Mosen, don't play with her if you don't think it's fun in the future. You'll spoil Ursa too much. Girls are meant to be spoiled. If you don't spoil me, it means you don't love me." Humph. Li Jianyue used Li Xiqing's method and said, "I'll tell Dad and let him criticize you." "Ursu, you are so bad." Li Mosen wrinkled his nose and said, "I won't play this with you in the future. When I'm in a good mood, I'll play with you again." "Don't do that," Li Jianyue frowned and pouted her pink lips. "Brother Mosen is the best," she said in an ingratiating tone. Li Mosen didn't listen to her. He turned his head and said, "When I'm in a good mood. Are you in a bad mood now?" Li Jianyue blinked her eyes, looking a little aggrieved. "Oh no, Ursu is bullying me. I'm not. Brother Mosen is the best. I can't bear to bully Brother Mosen." The little girl raised 3 fingers and made a gesture of 3. "I swear." Li Jianqian sweated and reminded her, "Ursu, you swore wrongly." Ha! Chapter 1270. "But, if the 3 in the middle are too difficult." Li Jianyue pouted and said, "Although I swore wrongly, my heart is true. I can't bear to bully Brother Mosen." As she said that, she leaned over and said, "Brother Mosen, Ella Bayu." Li Jianqian listened, looked up, and corrected, "It's I love you." Li Mosen's face turned red, and he was a little embarrassed. Li Jianyue smiled, as if she didn't notice the impact of her words on others. Her little face was full of joy as she said, "Anyway, that's what I mean. It's good that you understand." Then, she looked at Li Jianqian and said, "Brother, I love Ella Bayu too." These words shouldn't have been a big deal. But when it fell into Li Mosen's ears, it was a little unpleasant. The same thing, Ursa not only gave it to him, but also to Daesu. But Daesu was her biological brother, wasn't he? As for him, he was just an adopted child. Li Jianqian didn't notice Li Mosen's strangeness. When he heard this, he laughed and said, "Ursu, that's called I love you too." Oh, short kumbayu pui. Li Jianqian was powerless. He put down the book in his hand and said, "Come, read after me." The siblings began to struggle with the pronunciation, while Li Mosen sat on the side, took the famous book that Li Jianqian brought and read it. There was pinyin on it, and it didn't look difficult. The siblings stayed inside for the whole afternoon. When Su Qianxi came in, Li Jianqian was patiently teaching Li Jianyue words. Compared to Li Jianqian's patience, Li Jianyue's small body was crooked, and it was obvious that she lacked interest. She stared at the letters written by her brother in front of her and said, "Brother, your handwriting is so beautiful. Well, write one for me to see." Li Jianyue picked up the pen, crooked on the surface of the paper, drew a circle, and then drew a little more at the back. Wrong, write it like this. Li Jianqian grabbed her hand, stroke by stroke. Why are you so stupid? I really suspect that mom got the wrong baby when she was giving birth. When Li Jianyue heard this, she was unhappy. She pouted and said, "It won't happen. Daddy said that I look like mommy and I are both beautiful and cute. I will definitely look like mommy in the future." "I won't." "Why?" "Because you're not twins." "Aw." When Li Jianyue heard that, she turned to look at her twin brother. She blinked and said, "Then, will I look like my brother in the future?" "Of course not." Li Jianqian turned her head back and said, "Don't think too much. You are a woman, and I am a man. How can we look the same?" "But, my brother and I are twins." "Did you say that twins will look very similar?" Li Jianyue was unwilling to give up. She was unwilling to write. Twins are different from each other. Some look alike, while others don't. Oh. Li Jianyue didn't seem to understand. Then why don't we look alike? This question directly made Li Jianqian stumped. Xiao Xiao frowned and thought about it. After a long time, she said, "Because we don't look alike." "But why?" "Because so." Chapter 1271. Li Jianqian couldn't answer. He blushed and looked a little impatient as he shouted. "Hey, are you going to write or not?" Li Jianrui pouted and said, "I don't want to write. It's not fun at all." "But the little princess must know how to write." "A little princess who can't write will be laughed at," Li Mosin interrupted. Li Jianrui pouted even higher and said, "Why is there such an invention as words in the world? It's so annoying." Su Qianxi laughed and said, "Well, I won't write anymore. Let's go eat with uncle and auntie." Hearing that, Li Jianrui immediately stood up, threw away the pen in her hand, and shouted, "Mom, I want to go. Let's go together. Quickly put on your shoes." Su Qianxi patted her little butt and pushed her. Li Jianrui immediately smiled and put on her slippers. She ran to the shoe cabinet outside and took out her black bright leather princess shoes. Sitting on a small stool next to the shoe cabinet, the little girl tore the glued shoelaces and stuffed them on her feet. Li Jianqian and Li Mosin followed behind. The three little guys looked about the same size, but their appearances, temperaments, and personalities were all different. Yu Lily and O Ming sat on the sofa and looked at their children with a smile. Li Jianqian was wearing a pair of small air shoes. He untied the shoelaces and tied them neatly before standing up. "Oh, brother!" Li Jianrui suddenly shouted. It sounded like she was about to cry. She shouted, "The shoes went in, and I can't take them out." Li Jianqian turned his head and asked, "Where did they go?" "Look." The shoes were stepped on by the little girl's heel. Li Jianqian looked helpless and said in disgust, "Stupid." Li Jianrui didn't dare to speak and looked at her brother with a pair of big round eyes. Li Jianqian squatted down and took off her little shoes helplessly. He said, "You have to do this, like this," Li Jianrui responded, but she didn't listen very carefully. Instead, she looked in the direction of Li Mosin. The little fellows put on their shoes and stood up together, shouting, "Daddy, Mommy, we are ready." Looking at the interaction of the children and the lively atmosphere, O Ming quietly lowered his head and whispered into Yu Lily's ear, "It seems that it is good to have more children. You want 3, too." Yu Lily stretched out her finger and pushed his face away. "Do you think I'm a sow?" "Sows aren't bad either. 3 at a time." O Ming touched her finger and chuckled. "At that time, we can let the children play with their children." Second brother's children were very smart. All three of them were very clever. Oh Ming knew what was going on and whispered, that girl must have been spoiled by Lao air. As if to confirm his words, Li Xiqing walked up, picked up his daughter, and asked, "Are you hungry?" Ursu shook her head, "I'm not hungry." Li Xiqing seemed very happy. He pinched her little face and said, "Let's go. Daddy will take you to eat." Yu Lily also laughed and said, "Every time I come over, I see him coaxing or holding his daughter, and the two men ignore him. Will such favoritism leave a psychological shadow on the children?" Chapter 1272. Go find a sow to give birth to. Yu Lily pushed him, but she couldn't suppress the smile on her face. Oh Ming didn't mind. He pulled her along and followed the family of three. They followed quietly and quickly went out. Su Qianxi had a big car, and they were all neighbors. After getting in the car together, they drove to the hot pot restaurant. The children were very lively, especially Li Jianyue. She sang and jumped along the way and chatted with Yu Lily. At this moment, she sat on Yu Lily's lap and asked in a childish voice, "Auntie, can I learn painting from you in the future? I also like painting, but my brother always says that my painting is so ugly. I am so angry." Yu Lily smiled and said, "Of course, I am your neighbor now. If you want to play with me, you can come over at any time." "Really? Where do you live, Auntie? After dinner, I will take you to have a look." "Aha!" Li Jianyue looked very happy and said, "Then hurry up, Auntie." The car sped up, and soon they arrived at the place to eat. The children were playing together, and several adults were sitting at the coffee table and talking. Li Jianyue held the big pillow in the box in her hand and ran toward Li Mosen, shouting, "Brother Mosen, my button is off. Help me button it." Li Mosen was sitting in a chair playing a game, and Li Jianqian was playing with his phone. When he heard Li Jianyue's voice, he shouted, "No, Ursu, don't come over. We are playing a game. If we lose, it will be your fault." When Li Jianyue heard this, she was a little unhappy. She pouted and said, "What's so fun about playing a game? It's not fun at all." Li Jianqian ignored Li Jianyue and concentrated on playing the game. But Li Mosen quickly put down the phone in his hand, waved to Li Jianyue, and said, "Come here." Li Jianyue held the big pillow and immediately smiled. She jumped over with her short legs and shouted, "Brother Mosen is the best." Li Jianqian shouted and said, "No, Mosen, you are actually hanging up." Li Mosen ignored Li Jianqian's howl and focused on buttoning Li Jianyue's back. Then, the sound of Li Mosen's game character being killed came out, followed by Li Jianqian being killed. By the time Li Mosen had finished buttoning Li Jianyue's shirt, the news of everyone's death came. Then, they failed. "Li Mosen, you traitor, you actually hung up and lost." Li Jianqian threw the phone away and shouted angrily. Li Jianyue blinked her eyes. She hugged the big pillow and looked at her brother. She said, "It's okay to lose. Just win it back. Why are you so angry? Right, Brother Mosen?" Hearing that, Li Mosen nodded and said, "Yes, it's good to win it back." When Li Jianqian heard them echoing each other, he was so angry that he didn't want to pay attention to them. He turned around and picked up his phone to continue playing. Soon, the hot pot was ready. Su Qianxi rushed the children to the bathroom to wash their hands and sat down, but it was obvious that Li Jianqian was unhappy. His little face was stiff, and he sat in the chair without saying a word. That unhappy look was exactly the same as Li Xiqing. Chapter 1273. When Su Qianxi saw this, she leaned over and asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Li Jianqian picked up a piece of cold dish and put it into his mouth, but the force was a little forceful, and he looked very angry. When Li Xiqing saw this, he raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, "Desu, are you unhappy?" "No." Li Jianqian still said the same thing. He reached out his chopsticks and picked up another piece of food to eat. "Why are you unhappy?" Li Jianqian replied, "I'm not unhappy." "Did Ursa make you angry again?" Li Xiqing asked as he heated the beef for his wife. Li Jianyue was suddenly called. She looked up, blinked, and said, "Dad, I didn't. It was brother who lost the game with brother Mosen." "Oh." Li Xiqing looked at Li Jianqian. "Is that so?" Li Jianqian was silent for a moment before he said sullenly, "Mosen is always like this. He stops playing when Ursu calls him. He always causes me to lose." "I'm sorry, Desu." Li Mosen sat next to Li Jianqian and said, "Ursa didn't button her shirt properly just now, so I did it for her. But you let go at the critical moment. It's so hateful." Li Jianqian gritted his teeth, but immediately continued to eat and did not speak. Everyone finally understood what was going on. Li Jianyue pouted and apologized, "Brother, don't be angry. It's Ursu's fault. I won't call you guys when you're playing games in the future." When Li Xiqing heard this, he frowned and said, "A man should be magnanimous. It's natural to protect your sister. It's natural to help her. Why are you angry?" When Su Qianxi heard this, she reached out and pulled on Li Xiqing's sleeve and said, "Don't teach the children." Li Xiqing held Su Qianxi's hand and said, "The children are still young. There are some things that they should know. For a man, the most important thing should be his family. Whether it is his mother or his sister, they should be protected. And you boys, no matter your age, should be strong and self-respecting. You shouldn't vent your anger on your family, and you shouldn't be angry with your sister. Do you understand?" Yu Lily felt strange when she heard that. She glanced at O Ming and whispered, "Your second brother is too biased." O Ming smiled faintly. He turned his head and whispered, "A little, but that's how boys should be taught." Yu Lily, birds of a feather flocked together. When Li Jianqian, who was being lectured, heard his father's words, his bright red lips pursed even tighter. Sullenly, he said, "I didn't vent." Indeed, he did not vent. If Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing had not asked, he probably would not have said anything. Su Qianxi felt a bit distressed. She patted Li Xiqing and said, "Shut up. You're so annoying." As she spoke, she sat down beside Li Jianqian and said, "Don't listen to your father. If you are unhappy in the future, just say it and tell Mom." When Li Xiqing saw his wife's protective attitude, he didn't say anything else. She boiled a few more pieces of beef and put them in the bowl in front of Li Jianqian. She said, "You are still young, so I'll let it go this time. In the future, you have to learn to control your emotions. You have to be clear about what is important and what is not. If any small thing can affect your emotions, then you are a failure as a person." Chapter 1274. 5 years old, not young anymore. When I was 5, I was already in primary school. It is not good for these children to stay at home. Let Qingyu arrange for them to go to school, Li Xiqing said, looking at them. Su Qianxi was a little reluctant and said, "It's good for them to study at home. There's a limit to what my family can give me. I need to get in touch with other friends." After a pause, he continued, "If you don't go out and see, how will you know how good you are?" Su Qianxi was overjoyed by his words. Su Qianxi curled her lips, thought about it, and asked Li Jianqian, "After a few days, I will send you to school, okay?" "Whatever." Li Jianqian's expression had eased a lot, but when he said this, his eyes could not help but drift to Li Xiqing. His dark eyes were filled with unspeakable respect. Seeing this, Ming knew that the child had listened to what his second brother had just said. So smart. Like father, like son, just like Li Xiqing. If I go to school, will there be a lot of people? Li Jianyue seemed a little excited. Can I be in the same class as Brother Mosin? Sure. Li Xiqing curled his lips and glanced at his excited daughter. If you pass the exam. Li Jianyue was even happier and cheered, I will definitely get in. When you go back, you have to study hard, Li Jianqian, Li Xiqing called out. Li Jianqian straightened his back and looked at Li Xiqing. Dad. Go back and help your sister with her revision, Li Mosin. Li Mosin also looked over. He was a little happy and shouted, Here. You're 6 years old. I'll hire a tutor for you, so you can go straight to elementary school. Okay, Dad. Li Mosin was overjoyed. What about Daesu and Ursu? Will you be in the same class with me? Daesu will be in the same class as you. As for Ursu, Li Jianyue was a little unconvinced and shouted, I can get in. Dad, don't look down on me. Li Xiqing chuckled, pinched her little face with his big hand, and said, Hurry up and eat. The whole family sat together, happy and harmonious. After they finished eating, Yu Lily took them to tour the new house that she and Ming were living in. It was also Yu Lily's first time living in this house. Just when she thought she had explored all the places, she shouted, Auntie, there's a door up there. What's it for? The door above. When Yu Lily heard that, she looked up. It was a small place on the side of the stairs. If one did not look carefully, one would not notice that there was a small door here. The small door was only big enough for an adult to enter. It was very small. Ming stepped forward and said, That's a holographic room. Your Auntie Lily has never been in it before. Let's go. Uncle will take you in. Li Jianyue didn't understand what holographic meant, but when she heard that they were going in, she immediately nodded. Ming turned around and took out a remote control from somewhere. He pressed the button, and the small door quickly opened. It was pitch black inside. Ming pressed the remote control again, and a large area of light immediately lit up inside. Blue, murmuring water. Come, let's go in and take a look. Chapter 1275. Yu Lily had never been here before, so naturally, she did not know what it was like inside. As soon as she came in, she was shocked by the scene in front of her. The surroundings were navy blue, and there was water everywhere. Large and small sea fish were swimming around, looking lazy and leisurely. There was also cool air around him, as if there was really water coming from all directions. Gurgle, gurgle. The sound of water came from all directions, and she felt a sense of crisis. The little girl stood on the flat and hard ground, but this inexplicable feeling of being suspended in the air was a little frightening. Li Jianrui subconsciously grabbed Li Xiqing's big hand and leaned over with some fear. However, a pair of big eyes still stared curiously at the bottom. The fish coming and going, and the constantly gurgling water, all made Li Jianrui feel very excited and fun. At the bottom, there were beautiful corals and seaweed that swayed endlessly. The waves swayed layer by layer, looking beautiful. Beautiful tropical fish, colorful, gently swayed their tails, and their mouths blew bubbles. And Li Jianqian and Li Mosin, looking at the deep-sea fish coming and going, seemed to appear in front of them. They reached out and wanted to touch them, but quickly passed through their bodies. Su Qianxi also felt a little emotional, feeling that it was a little fun. Ming saw the appearance of a few children, and then looked at his own woman. At this moment, Lily was staring at a shell below. The shell swam and opened and closed, looking a little funny. Lily looked at it with a smile and shouted, "Look at this." Li Jianrui giggled, took Li Xiqing's hand, and shouted, "Dad, can I come often to play in the future? You have to ask your Uncle O Ming." When Li Jianrui heard that, she turned to look at O Ming, blinked her big eyes, and asked, "Uncle O Ming, can I?" "Of course, you are welcome at any time." O Ming rubbed Li Jianrui's little head. "You can ask your brothers to bring you over." "Okay." Li Jianrui was very happy. "Thank you, Uncle." "Well, let's go back." Li Xiqing pulled Su Qianxi and said, "They just got married today." Hearing this, Su Qianxi understood. Her cheeks were slightly red, and her elbow gently moved Li Xiqing. Then, he brought the children with him and walked out. The children were a little reluctant to leave, especially Li Jianrui. She had a pair of big eyes and looked around. She seemed to be very interested. However, no matter how reluctant he was still pulled away by Su Qianxi. "Leaving so soon?" "Stay a little longer," Lily said. "No, it's time for the kids to go home and take a shower. See you." She waved her hand. When Lily heard that, she nodded her head and said, "All right, I'll see you off." "No, you guys stay here. It's only a few minutes walk. It's not far." Su Qianxi pushed her back and patted her hand. "Happy wedding." His words made Lily's heart feel as if it was boiling water, and it felt warm. "Thank you, Qian." She chuckled and waved her hand. "Let's go." After sending off the family, Lily closed the door. When she turned around, she saw O Ming walking toward her with something in his hand. And that man. Wasn't that O Ming? What's going on? When did I ever shoot such a film? Lily was embarrassed and annoyed. Pervert. Chapter 1277. Another wedding gift. Lily turned to look at him. Her cheeks were slightly red, but her embarrassment had calmed down a little. She asked, "Why are there so many wedding gifts?" "Well." O Ming thought about it and said softly, "Just think of it as compensation for being late to the wedding." "Wedding, yes, wedding." O Ming pushed the hair on her forehead to the back of her head. "Second brother's wedding is flying to Ireland. I heard that the next wedding anniversary is going to Venice. TSK, this guy is too wild." His words were full of envy, jealousy, and hate. O Ming's face was full of envy. "But, in the future, I will also be a man with a wife. Do you have any particular place you want to go?" "I want to go." Lily's voice was dragged out, and her lips curled up. "I haven't thought of it yet. Let's talk about it when the time comes. There might not even be a wedding." Before O Ming brought it up, Lily had never thought about it at all. Weddings were a little too extravagant for her. "Okay." O Ming looked at her and asked her to turn her face away. "Look." O Ming's doppelganger and Lily were holding hands, each carrying a backpack as they climbed up the mountain. Lily looked like she was having a hard time. O Ming, on the other hand, was much more relaxed. He looked down from above and reached out to Lily. The two of them slowly climbed the mountain together. Climbing a mountain. Lily was a little excited. "We haven't climbed a mountain before. It looks really good. When we're done with our business, we can go and do whatever we want." O Ming pulled Lily toward them. Lily found that as they walked, the view in front of them was getting closer and closer. It was like climbing a mountain. The difference was that Lily was in front of a mountain rock, but her feet were still as flat as before. Oh Ming, is it a good idea for us to be doing this? Yu Lily was still feeling uneasy. If we hide it from your mother like this, what if she finds out? At most, I'll get beaten up by my father. Oh Ming looked indifferent. Anyway, it's not like I haven't been beaten before. Isn't your mother's health not very good? It's okay. Thanks to second brother, I've already solved Shen Luo Han's problem. She won't be angry. Don't worry so much. Just wait for my good news. Well. Yu Lily's heart was a little perturbed. Looking at them who were climbing the mountain side by side not far ahead, the longing and yearning in her heart became deeper and deeper. After the shower, Yu Lily was drying Oh Ming's hair when her phone rang. The ringtone belonged to Oh Ming. Oh Ming reached out and took it. At a glance, he saw the big word on it, Mom. Take it. Yu Lily turned off the hairdryer and reached out to touch his hair. Oh Ming picked up the phone. Mom. Why aren't you back yet? Lil, oh, I've been waiting for you for a long time. You should know your limits when playing outside. Why aren't you back yet? I won't go back tonight. I'll sleep outside. Upon hearing this, Xiao Ziqing immediately guessed it and asked, You've gotten back together with that Yu woman, right? Yeah. Oh Ming didn't avoid the topic. He narrowed his eyes and leaned back slightly. I've been with her for a long time. I went to Fujian to look for her. Mom, don't you know that? Chapter 1278. Mom, what kind of drug did my father feed you back then? Do you want to marry him that badly? Xiao Ziqing immediately retorted, How can that be the same? Your father and I are of the same social status. What kind of family does that woman come from? Yu Lily paused in the middle of helping Oh Ming fix his hair. Oh Ming reached out and removed the hand from his head. He said into the phone, Mom, what does it mean to be of the same social status? Is it like Enchanting's family? Xiao Ziqing laughed coldly. At the very least, Enchanting's family makes it impossible for me to find any other reason for her to marry you other than liking you. Is that so? But Enchanting is not a biological daughter of the Shen family. You know that, don't you? Regardless of whether she is biological or not, the Shen family treats her like a daughter. That means she is a daughter of the Shen family. But now that she is like this, of course, I can't let you marry her. What if Yu Lily's family is the same as the Shen family? Oh Ming's trap, one by one, slowly and patiently lured Xiao Ziqing into it. Yu Lily had discovered it, but Xiao Ziqing had no idea. Xiao Ziqing was amused and asked, Isn't she an orphan? Yes, but Grandma Shen likes Lily very much. She has already accepted her as her granddaughter. In a few days, I will go with her to the capital to meet old Mrs. Shen and hold the induction ceremony. Xiao Ziqing was stunned and asked, What do you mean? An adopted grandchild. Yu Lily will soon become the adopted daughter of Enchanting's father and Mr. Shen Longyue. Oh Ming enunciated each and every word clearly and firmly. Xiao Ziqing suddenly thought of old Mrs. Shen bringing Yu Lily to the house a few days ago. Could it be that it started from that time? Indeed, when old Mrs. Shen spoke, she was defending Yu Lily between the lines. Oh Ming's words were highly credible. An adopted daughter is not a biological daughter after all. The Shen family treats her like a daughter, so she is a daughter of the Shen family. Didn't you just say that? Xiao Ziqing was stumped by her own words and was momentarily speechless. Just as she was about to say something, she heard Oh Ming say, Mom, it's late. I'm going to rest. I'll bring her back tomorrow and let her serve you tea. Serve tea. When Xiao Ziqing heard these two words, she vaguely guessed something. Wait. Wait a moment. But before he could say the next two words, the call was immediately hung up. Serve tea. Qiao Ziqing had a bad feeling about this. She picked up her phone and called her son, but he wouldn't pick up. Offering tea. What did that mean? Wasn't bringing a woman home to serve tea something that only a new wife would do? Could it be that they were married? After figuring it out, Qiao Ziqing felt a surge of air in her chest. She was so furious that she shouted, "Old O!" Oh Ming hung up and switched the phone to silent mode. He tossed it aside and pressed Yu Lily onto the bed. He placed his head on her neck and said, "Honey, go to sleep." Yu Lily's neck was tickled. She chuckled and said, "Wait a moment. My hair isn't dry yet." "Yeah, I'll help you dry it. Sit down." Chapter 1279. Well, let's go back. Oh Ming was in a good mood. He looked at Yu Lily, lifted her hair, and picked up the towel next to him to wipe it. An ugly daughter-in-law has to see her parents-in-law. You're ugly. Yu Lily pointed at him. Well, I'm ugly. Oh Ming threw the towel away with one hand and then took the hairdryer to help her dry her hair. But he only had one hand, so he held the hairdryer and blew it here and there. Yu Lily's short hair was a little messy. In the end, she couldn't stand it anymore and slapped his hand away. Do you know how to do it? Well, of course, but it's inconvenient with only one hand. I'll do it myself. Don't move. Let me do it. Oh Ming didn't want to let go, so he pressed her hand down and slowly began to blow. Yu Lily was blown even more messy. When Oh Ming turned off the hairdryer, she was a little unhappy and crawled into the quilt. Oh Ming put down the hairdryer, lifted the quilt, and crawled in. His hand touched his wife's body naughtily. Feeling her soft flesh, he whispered in her ear, "You're meaty." No woman liked to be called fat, and Yu Lily was no exception. She pinched his hand and drove it away. Then why are you still touching me? I like it. I was too thin before, and it was uncomfortable to touch. Especially when she just came back from the capital, her body was as thin as a bamboo pole. She looked haggard, and she was bullied. Now, she was that lovely and beautiful little woman again. Thinking about it, he reached out and pinched her waist again. He slowly moved up and pinched her soft white skin. He leaned over and whispered, "Well, it's comfortable. Go away." Yu Lily pushed him away, but he immediately stuck to her again. He raised his big hand and turned her face. His lips sealed her mouth, and Oh Ming held her in his arms. He began to do whatever he wanted. When she got up the next day, Yu Lily's stomach was a little painful. Especially in her lower abdomen, the pain was like a drill. Holding her stomach, she went to the bathroom. Sure enough, it was her period. Fortunately, Oh Ming had already prepared a lot of things for her. The feminine products were placed in the cabinet, and Yu Lily took a bag and immediately put them on. Her movements were very light, so she didn't wake up Oh Ming, who was sleeping soundly. When he woke up, there was no one beside him. He washed up and changed his clothes. When he walked out, he saw breakfast on the table. It was a simple Chinese breakfast with soybean milk and fried dough sticks on the table. Yu Lily walked out with a plate of ham and eggs on it. When he saw Oh Ming coming over, he greeted, "Good morning." "Who are you saying good morning to?" "With you." Yu Lily felt a little strange and looked at him. Oh Ming walked over and took the plate from her hand. "What did you call me?" As soon as Yu Lily heard that, she knew what he was going to do. A sly smile flashed across his big eyes as he said, "Oh." Oh Ming, who was originally full of expectations, was suddenly disappointed. He was a little dissatisfied. He frowned and said, change it. Oh Ming. Change again. That's all. Yu Lily shrugged. Oh Ming walked over and gritted his teeth. He hugged her and kissed her lips. In a low voice, he said, "Call me husband." Wife, call me. Husband. Oh Ming was finally satisfied. He held her head with his big hand and gave her a long, lingering morning kiss. Chapter 1280. Seeing Yu Lily like this, Oh Ming subconsciously looked at the place she was covering and asked softly, "What's wrong? Is that here?" Yu Lily nodded, and her face, which was normal, gradually turned pale. Oh Ming asked her to sit down on the chair and said, "Do you want to make brown sugar water? Where do you put it?" "No need. Help me get the medicine on the coffee table." Yu Lily bent over in pain and covered her stomach. Oh Ming turned around and walked out. Soon, he brought in the medicine that Yu Lily mentioned. However, this medicine was not the medicine that Oh Ming had imagined for menstrual pain, but a box of common Fenbix. "This is a painkiller, right? Is it good for the body to take this?" Oh Ming frowned. "It's not good for the body to take it normally. Is it okay for you to take it during your period?" Yu Lily couldn't stand the pain anymore. She reached out and said, "This is a painkiller. Give it to me." It meant that she agreed that there was a problem with it. Oh Ming threw the medicine box aside, pulled her up, and said, "Can you walk?" However, looking at her appearance, it didn't seem like she could walk. Oh Ming turned around and patted his shoulder. "Come up. I'll take you to the hospital." His hand was still bandaged. Otherwise, he would have picked her up and taken her to the hospital. Yu Lily was a little reluctant and said, "I'll just take some medicine and lie down for a while. I still have to go to work. I asked for leave yesterday. I've already arranged marriage leave for you. You can go to work after we return from our honeymoon. Or you don't go to work. I can afford to support you." Oh Ming gritted his teeth. How is she still thinking about going to work in this situation? Yu Lily looked at his unhappy face and said, "It's okay, come up." Oh Ming didn't allow her to argue. As he spoke, he tilted his head slightly and said, "How about I remove the gauze and carry you?" When Yu Lily heard that, she pouted and said, "I can walk by myself. Let's go. Don't turn around and press your hand. Your mother will fight me." Oh Ming, who was originally angry, didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard that. He turned around and took her hand. Oh Ming carefully helped her up. "Let's go." Yu Lily endured the pain and stood up, but this movement made her face even paler. Oh Ming felt sorry for her and asked, "Aren't you a woman? Wasn't it only right and proper to come here? Why did it hurt so much? Why didn't you have this problem before?" His tone sounded a little annoyed, but the heartache in his voice was obvious. When Yu Lily heard that, she pursed her lips and didn't answer. Instead, she shrank back and said, "Why don't we not go to the hospital? I can't walk." What if a doctor told Oh Ming that this was the sequelae of the miscarriage? Wouldn't Oh Ming feel terrible? After so many years, this time, it wasn't particularly serious. Even if he didn't take any painkillers, he could just grit his teeth and endure it. Oh Ming's heart tightened. Looking at her pale face, he said, "I'll carry you." Yu Lily resisted and pushed him away, saying, "I'm not going. Is it very uncomfortable?" Oh Ming finally didn't insist. He reached out and gently held her waist. "I'll take you to the sofa to lie down." Chapter 1281. When he went downstairs again, Oh Ming found Yu Lily lying on the sofa. Her face was extremely pale. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and his lips turned a little purple. Is it really okay not to go to the hospital in this situation? Oh Ming scratched his head and suddenly felt a little panicked. After thinking about it, he picked up his phone and called 120. Hello, this is Yushio. Lily was a little dizzy from the pain. When she heard that he was calling an ambulance, she almost laughed and shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" Oh Ming ignored Lily. After thanking her, he hung up the phone. Lily walked over and reached out to hit him weakly. She said coquettishly, "It's just menstrual cramps. Why are you calling an ambulance? That's so pretentious, shut up and lie down." Oh Ming reached out and wiped the cold sweat off her forehead. Is it that serious? Could it be that he's sick? Is it not menstrual cramps? How can menstrual cramps be so serious? Lily was angry and amused at the same time. She leaned on him and held him weakly. You're the one who is sick. It's normal for women to have menstrual cramps. Oh Ming asked, really? Yeah, Oh Ming was skeptical. He gently put her down and said, I'll make some brown sugar water for you. Wait for me. I didn't buy brown sugar. Lily's words shattered his fantasy. I don't have the habit of drinking it. Oh Ming didn't like sweets, so he didn't prepare any. Oh Ming was a little angry. He went back and reached out his big hand to gently stroke her belly. He asked, Does it still hurt? It hurts. Lily squinted and leaned against him. But it's better than before. Oh Ming took a deep breath and picked up his phone to call his friend. The call was quickly connected. You don't have to come. I've called an ambulance. Damn, I'm already on the way. Oh Ming hung up the phone and put his big hand on her belly again. Can I rub it? No, she said. Well, there's blood inside. Will it not hurt if I rub it? What kind of nonsense is that? Lily was annoyed and amused at the same time. She said, Your head was bruised when you hit it. Do you think it will go away just by rubbing it? For a moment, Oh Ming was speechless. Seeing that she was obviously in pain, he didn't dare to tease her anymore. He sat quietly by her side and guarded her. Lily squinted her eyes and felt a little drowsy. After a few minutes, the sound of the ambulance could be heard. When Oh Ming called the ambulance just now, he said that a woman was not feeling well and needed an ambulance. However, the nurses and doctors were speechless when they found out that the lady's discomfort was menstrual cramps. But when they saw Lily's condition, they didn't dare delay. When they arrived at the hospital, Oh Ming asked for a separate resting room. After she was hooked up to a drip and laid down for a while, Lily's complexion improved. Lily was in a deep sleep when she suddenly remembered something very important. When she opened her eyes, she saw Oh Ming standing by her side. Her heart warmed and she called out, Oh Ming. Yes. Didn't you say that you were going to serve tea to your parents today? Want to go later? This kind of thing, I said yesterday, I have to do it today. Although I know that Oh Ming's mother has a lot of opinions about me, at least I have to maintain my image. Chapter 1282. But I've already promised your mother. It's not good not to go, right? Lily was a little scared at the thought of Oh Ming's mother making things difficult for her. She was 80%, no, 100% waiting to find fault with me so that Oh Ming could break up with me. Oh, no, it should be called a divorce now. If Oh Ming's mother really did that, then she would be guilty, and she would regret it. When Oh Ming heard that, he laughed and gritted his teeth unhappily. Go back to seek death. Do you want to die on the road or at home? Lily was speechless. What a vicious and mean mouth. Can't you hope for something better? Oh Ming shut his mouth and said, "Anyway, I'm not going back. Do whatever you want. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility." Yu Lily pinched him and said with dissatisfaction, "You're trying to magnify the conflict between me and your mother. It's okay. I'll talk to her later. I'm fine. Let's go later, Oh Ming." "No." "Okay." Oh Ming didn't allow her to argue. He tapped her forehead. "Don't you understand? I said no means no. Go back and rest well. The doctor said that you have a cold wound and it's very difficult to treat. You have to find a Chinese medicine practitioner to nurse your body." When Yu Lily heard that, her heart suddenly beat faster. When she saw Oh Ming's expression, she suddenly lost her confidence and asked, "What else did the doctor say?" Oh Ming looked at her deeply and shook his head gently. "Nothing." "What do you want him to say?" Yu Lily pursed her lips and shook her head. "Be good and lie down. When you're better, we'll go. Be good." Oh Ming reached out and touched her forehead. It was so cold that it was frightening. "Are you cold?" "No," she said. "Sleep for a while. I'll wake you up when you're ready." "Okay." Yu Lily was indeed not feeling well. She closed her eyes and soon, the sound of even breathing could be heard. Oh Ming saw that she was asleep, so he got up and walked out. He felt a little annoyed and touched his pocket, but it was empty. He had gone out in a hurry and hadn't brought a cigarette. Oh Ming wasn't addicted to cigarettes, but he always carried a box with him. He often left it there for a few days without touching a cigarette. But now, he really wanted a stick to relieve the boredom in his heart. A woman's uterus cannot be underestimated. Not only will it affect the body, but it is also very likely to cause infertility. Looking at your wife's condition, it has not been a day or two. When she feels better, bring her here for a checkup. Why didn't she have this problem before? In the past, you acted as if nothing had happened. It's hard to say. It could be because she stayed up late for a long time or came into contact with frozen things. It could also be because she had a miscarriage or she didn't sit well after giving birth, even abortion. Of course, your wife had a miscarriage. Oh Ming didn't know how to answer, so he gave a vague answer and quickly left. However, in the deepest part of his heart, he felt a dull pain as if something was tugging at it. Sequelae of miscarriage. So, she had been like this for the past 4 to 5 years. When he felt pain, he took painkillers instead of going to the hospital or calling for an ambulance. Moreover, it was very likely to cause infertility. Oh Ming leaned against the door of the ward and let out a heavy sigh. His heart was like a heavy stone, and it hurt. He didn't mind, but what about his mother? She had a strong opinion of Yu Lily. If she knew that Yu Lily might not be able to give birth, then... Chapter 1283. After the drip, Yu Lily had already woken up. But when she got home, she still fell asleep with her eyes closed. It was obvious that she was feeling very uncomfortable. As she fell asleep, Yu Lily got up again. She turned around and saw Oh Ming sitting next to her. She asked, "Have you had breakfast? Go and eat something." "What time is it now?" "It's past 11 o'clock. Are you hungry?" Yu Lily shook her head. She didn't feel hungry anymore. "Go to sleep. Call me when you are hungry." Hearing that, Yu Lily nodded, closed her eyes, and quickly fell asleep again. Oh Ming had taken a wedding leave for the past few days, but he had nothing to do with Yu Lily's current condition. So, he asked Su Qing to send the important documents from the company to the villa and deal with them at home. But before the documents were delivered, he received a call from home. Looking at the time, it was almost 12 o'clock. Oh Ming thought about what to say and then picked up the phone. Qiao Ziqing's voice came quickly with anger and shouted, "Why haven't you come back yet? Didn't you say you would come back today?" Oh Ming was afraid of Qiao Ziqing's reaction, so he didn't dare to call back. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Mom, I am not feeling well today. I forgot to call you." Hearing that, Qiao Ziqing's aggressive tone suddenly softened a lot, and she asked anxiously, "What's wrong? Where do you feel uncomfortable? Does your hand hurt again? Did you go to the hospital?" "Well, I went. It's nothing serious. Now Lily is taking care of me, and I am much better now." Oh Ming lied without blinking. Hearing that, Qiao Ziqing became even more anxious and said, "Oh, where are you now?" "I am at home." "How can that be? Your woman looks like a child." "She is still a child. How can she take care of people?" "Where are you?" "I will go to see you." "No, I have a headache. I'm hanging up." After that, before Qiao Ziqing could speak, Oh Ming directly hung up the phone. Qiao Ziqing looked at the phone anxiously and called Oh Ming again, but he didn't answer. Oh Ming looked at the phone that kept ringing and felt a headache coming on. He couldn't let her come. If she knew that Lily wasn't feeling well and he was taking care of her, his mother would be even more upset. The information was quickly delivered. At about 2 or 3 o'clock, Oh Ming was starving. When he went to the room, he found that Lily was still asleep. He reached out and touched her forehead. Perhaps it was because she was covered with a blanket, but her body felt a little warm. Fortunately, it was no longer cold. "You, get up and eat." Oh Ming's voice wasn't loud. She immediately opened her eyes and asked, "What time is it?" "Past 2 o'clock. Why don't we go to your mother's place?" "I feel uneasy." "Have you called your mother?" "Yes, I told her." "It's okay. What do you want to eat?" "I'll have it delivered." Lily was skeptical and asked, "Really?" "Of course, why would I lie to you?" "How about some porridge?" Lily calmed down and nodded. "Well, okay." By the time the meal was delivered, almost an hour had passed. However, there was another unexpected person who came along with the delivery boy. Chapter 1284. Oh Ming's mental state was obviously much better than before. He seemed to be very energetic, and even his complexion and appearance had become a lot better. Qiao Ziqing saw it and heard her son's words. She snorted and said, "If you don't tell me, I can't find it." "Do you think I can't find it because you put this house under Lily's name?" Qiao Ziqing actually found a lot of real estate, but this one was bought 2 years ago, and it was only today that it was transferred to Lily's name. In addition, this place was the closest to Oh Ming's best friend. Coupled with what her son said today and yesterday, Qiao Ziqing guessed about 70% to 80%. But when she stopped the car, she saw that the delivery box was from the porridge restaurant that Oh Ming often ordered, so she was even more certain. She followed them to try her luck, and she didn't expect to bet correctly. "What's wrong with you?" She looked like she was fine. She didn't look like she had just come back from the hospital and needed someone to take care of her. Oh Ming's lie was exposed, and he felt a little embarrassed. He coughed lightly and let the person who delivered the porridge go in, record the bill, and sign the bill. When he looked back, Qiao Ziqing had already walked around the villa. "Where's that woman?" Qiao Ziqing walked around. "The room is upstairs, right?" "Mom, wait a minute." But how could Qiao Ziqing listen to him? She had already walked upstairs. Lily was tired from sleeping. After freshening up, she opened the door and heard Qiao Ziqing's voice. Hearing this voice, Lily's heart was in her mouth. For a moment, she stopped in place. She didn't know whether to go or go back. Xiao Ziqing came up and saw Yu Lily standing at the door of the master bedroom. Looking at Yu Lily's sickly pale face and her wrinkled clothes, he knew who really needed to be taken care of. Xiao Ziqing frowned and stepped forward. Yu Lily was at a loss for a moment. She called out softly, Auntie. But after thinking about it, she felt that something was wrong. She and Oh Ming were married. How could she call her auntie? But if she called her mom, would she laugh at her and scold her? Oh Ming quickly caught up. Seeing them in a stalemate, he quickly walked over and said, Mom, why are you running around? Can't I walk around my son's house? Xiao Ziqing glared at Oh Ming and said, even if you gave it to someone else, I still have the right to do so. Gave it to someone else? What did he mean by that? Yu Lily was a little confused and looked at Oh Ming at the same time. Oh Ming hurried forward, pulled Xiao Ziqing over and said, Mom, Lily is not feeling well. Let's go down and have some porridge. It just arrived, and it won't taste good when it's cold. I can't afford it. Why are you drinking porridge at this time? Other than having porridge for breakfast and supper, don't you drink coffee at other times? Xiao Ziqing was obviously unhappy. She glared at Yu Lily and said sarcastically, I'm not so lucky to be served by my son. The mockery in his words couldn't be more obvious. Yu Lily didn't say anything. She felt a little uncomfortable. Mom. Chapter 1285. Oh Ming felt a headache coming on. Just as he was about to say something, Yu Lily said, I'm sorry, Auntie. I didn't know I was feeling so unwell today. We just came back from the hospital. Did I talk to you? How impudent. Xiao Ziqing was a little angry and shouted. A person should know their place. Don't you know who you are and how much you are worth? You have no manners at all. Yu Lily felt the pain in her abdomen increase. Her face was not looking too good. She pursed her lips and said, Auntie, I don't have parents. But, Auntie, when someone is talking to you, you interrupted them without permission. Furthermore, you said that to a junior. Is that considered good manners? Oh Ming felt a headache coming on. He went up to Yu Lily and pulled her back. Both the old and the young were stubborn. The old one had been spoiled by his father. When he scolded someone, he didn't know how to control his temper. How could he stand such ridicule? As for the young one, she was also difficult to please. If things went south, the two of them might really start fighting. When Xiao Ziqing heard Yu Lily's words, she found it hard to believe. She was so angry that she laughed. Before she could say anything, Oh Ming stepped between them and said, I'm so hungry. If you continue to quarrel, do you want me to starve to death? Junior. Look at your attitude now. How are you behaving like a junior? You have no manners at all. Xiao Ziqing was furious. Do you think that just because my son likes you, you can be our daughter-in-law? Let me tell you, no way. As long as I'm alive, you will never be able to marry into our family. Xiao Ziqing's words were harsh. Yu Lily suddenly had a wicked thought. Your son and I have already registered our marriage. Go to hell. But, she immediately suppressed the thought. Too bad. She opened her mouth but didn't say anything. She looked at Oh Ming. I'm hungry. Oh Ming looked at them miserably. Both of them were grandmothers. He couldn't afford to offend either of them. Putting on a show was the safest way. After all, Xiao Ziqing was his mother. When she heard him say that, she snorted and turned her back. Look at you. If you're hungry, eat. Who's stopping you from eating? After saying that, he crossed his arms and walked down. When Ming saw that, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. He pulled on Lily's hand and softly said, "Let's go down and eat." Lily felt a little aggrieved and asked, "Can your mother still eat when you look at me?" "It doesn't matter. I'm here." Ming pulled her along. "Besides, my mom is full. She eats on time, so she won't go hungry." He must have eaten at this hour. Lily followed him downstairs. When he went downstairs, he found that Xiao Ziqing had already removed the packaging of the porridge. She had gone to the disinfectant cabinet in the kitchen to retrieve 2 sets of bowls and chopsticks. When Lily saw it, her heart ached. 2 sets of cutlery, one for herself and one for Ming, right? The feeling of being ostracized was definitely not a good one. But Lily had no idea what to do now. Enduring the pain in her lower abdomen and back, Lily walked into the kitchen. She helped Ming and herself wash their hands carefully. Then, she took a set of cutlery for herself and walked out. Xiao Ziqing had already cooled the porridge. When she saw Lily take another set of cutlery out, she said unhappily, "Hey, are you looking down on me? Are you planning to do it yourself?" Chapter 1286. Lily was taken aback. She looked at her and asked, "Is that for me?" When Xiao Ziqing saw the look of disbelief on her face, she suddenly felt a little awkward. She turned around and said, "Of course. This is my upbringing. If I'm serving it for my son, there's no reason I can't serve it for you. You're the only one who can measure the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure." When she said that, Lily's face turned red. "Indeed. I really do seem to be a little mean." Lily put down the bowl and chopsticks and walked up to her. "Thank you. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you just now." Xiao Ziqing sat down at the table and looked at Lily. She pouted and said, "Forget it. The more magnanimous you are, the better your upbringing is. I won't argue with you." Although that was what she said, Lily still didn't feel comfortable saying it out loud. Weren't those words implying that Lily's magnanimity and upbringing were poor? Sitting in the chair, he had originally thought that Ming's mother treated him well, but now, all of a sudden, he was gone. Even when she was eating, she felt that it was tasteless. After a few bites, Lily couldn't eat anymore. She put the bowl in front of her and didn't move. "Not to your liking." Ming looked at her. "Are you still not feeling well? Does it still hurt?" Lily shook her head. "I can't eat anymore. I'm not hungry." "Even if you're not hungry, you should eat more. You haven't eaten all day. How can you not eat?" Ming frowned. "Eat more. If you can't eat anymore, you can have some porridge and water." When Lily heard that, she inadvertently looked up and saw Xiao Ziqing. Her heart was even more perturbed. She couldn't help but think, does Ming's mother think that I'm too delicate? I've never been loved by my parents since I was a child, and now I'm acting like a princess. Or, does she think that I'm doing it to prove how much her son cares about me? The more Lily thought about it, the more unhappy she felt. Fortunately, Xiao Ziqing sat quietly at the side and didn't say anything. It was as if she hadn't heard anything. Lily forced herself to eat 2 more bites. She really couldn't eat anymore and said, "I'm full." "Are you sick?" Xiao Ziqing could not help but ask, "Why are you making it so complicated? If you want to eat, then eat. If you don't want to eat, then don't eat. Why are you asking my son to serve you?" "Mom, don't all women have those days? You're a woman too." She was in so much pain in the morning that she couldn't even straighten her back. "I called an ambulance and sent her to the hospital on a drip. Only then did she feel better," Ming explained. Yu Lily couldn't help but imagine what Xiao Ziqing would say next. She would probably say, "You're so delicate. Who are you putting on a show for?" Or, "Why did you call for an ambulance when you're having your period? You think I never came?" Unexpectedly, Xiao Ziqing said, "It's that serious. Has it always been like this?" Yu Lily was a little surprised, but she quickly shook her head and said, "Only in the past few years. Not in the past. TSK, I heard that you haven't been doing too well these past few years." Sure enough, people can't migrate. Once they migrate, they'll have bad luck. Look, with this bad luck, even your body has problems. Sigh. Xiao Ziqing seemed to sigh. But Yu Lily always felt that there was a hidden curse in every word she said. However, after thinking about it carefully, he couldn't come up with anything. What did she mean by those words? Yu Lily couldn't figure it out. She looked at Xiao Ziqing and nodded her head hesitantly. She echoed, "That's true." Chapter 1287. I heard that. Who else would have said that? It had to be Ming. Ming's meaning couldn't be clearer. He probably wanted to use the name of the Shen family to pressure his mother. When Yu Lily heard that, she understood everything. She nodded her head, thought about her words, and said, "Granny Shen is very good to me. She wants me to visit her in the capital when I have time." When Xiao Ziqing heard that, she suddenly remembered the scene when old Mrs. Shen had brought Yu Lily to their house. From the looks of it, she was indeed very protective of the little girl. Although she is a little annoying, her luck is not bad, Xiao Ziqing said to herself. Yu Lily was speechless for a moment. Indeed, nothing good came out of a filthy mouth. "Mom, aren't you going to eat a little? It's quite delicious." Ming changed the topic. Xiao Ziqing looked at him and said angrily, "I'm not eating. If you have nothing to do, go home. Don't stay out all day. Don't let people think that I lost my son in my middle age." Yu Lily was speechless. Ming was speechless. "All right, I'm leaving." Xiao Ziqing stood up and turned to walk out. Ming replied, "Take care." Yu Lily reached out and pointed at his head. Then, she walked out and asked, "Did you drive here? Why don't I give you a ride?" "No, I have my own car." In the end, she added, "Is the red Jeep in the yard yours?" Yu Lily was stunned and didn't know how to answer. "Is it mine?" Ming said he gave it to me, but I didn't dare to accept it. Now, she was probably trying to use this as a pretext again, wasn't she? Xiao Ziqing saw Yu Lily's expression and said angrily, "What are you nervous about? If it is, then it is. If it isn't, then it isn't." As she said that, she opened the door and walked away. Yu Lily quickly followed her to the car. She watched her drive away before she walked in. As soon as she entered, she saw that Ming was still sitting at the dining table, perfectly fine. Yu Lily went up and said, "How can you treat your mother like this? You didn't even send her off. What if she thinks that you've learned bad things from me?" Ming almost spat out the porridge in his mouth. He laughed and said, "What's there to send? She's not a child. However, I really didn't expect her to ask about the car. I was scared to death just now. If she knew that you bought it for me, I would be scolded by her again." Yu Lily sat on the side, her heart suddenly relaxed, and even her stomach began to feel hungry. After finishing the bowl of porridge, Yu Lily added some more. Ming looked at her and said, "What are you afraid of? She won't eat you up. She can scold you if she wants. She has a sharp tongue, but her heart is not bad. Haven't you noticed? Her attitude toward you is much better than before." I didn't find anything. He was scared to death, so where would he find the time to discover this? After she finished eating, Ming was still eating. Lily had slept enough and felt much more comfortable. She wandered around the living room in boredom. Walking to the coffee table, Lily suddenly caught a glimpse of a red booklet. The gold words, marriage certificate, were particularly eye-catching. Lily was shocked when she saw it. She immediately picked it up and opened it. The stamp inside was striking, and the photo was beautiful. Isn't this my marriage certificate with Ming? Chapter 1288. Looking at the marriage certificate, Lily turned to look at Ming nervously and said, "Why did you put the marriage certificate here?" Ming turned his head and glanced at it. Then, without a care in the world, he said, "I look at it when I'm working. I look energetic." But your mother seems to have seen it. What should we do? If she saw it, then she saw it, Ming said. What he wanted was for her to see it. Anyway, it is a fact that we are married. Why should we be afraid of letting others know? Lily was speechless, but she felt a little lucky and asked, "Did your mother see it or not?" If she saw it, why didn't she react at all? But if she didn't see it, bah! How could she not see such a conspicuous thing placed here? Thinking of Qiao Ziqing's softened expression and words, Lily felt a little complicated. Don't think so much. Just let nature take its course. Ming folded the bowl and chopsticks. I'm full. Well, leave it. I'll wash it. You go back to work. Your stomach doesn't hurt anymore. Much better. At least washing the dishes was absolutely no problem. Let me do it. You rest. Pfft. Lily looked at his remaining hand. Washing the dishes with one arm. That's not good, is it? It's a new trend, Ming said. Get lost. Don't take up space. Go back to work. Lily waved her hand in disgust and shouted. All right. Lily quickly cleaned up the dishes and got some hot water to wash them. When she went out, she saw Ming flying over the keyboard with one hand. He was typing very quickly. When he saw her come out, he waved at her. Come over and take a look. On the computer screen was the face of a middle-aged woman in her 50s. Her skin was dark, and her face was wrinkled. She was smiling at the camera. She was wearing a beautiful dark purple coat, and her short hair was curled into small black curls. What's wrong? Who is this? This is the woman who gave birth to you. Her name is Su Meijian. As Ming spoke, he brought up Su Meijian's information. She's 54 years old this year and has 2 children. The older one is already over 30 years old, and the younger one is also close to 30. One of her children died more than 20 years ago. She's living a pretty good life now. Lily looked at the completely unfamiliar woman in the photo. After a moment of silence, she asked, "Does she know me?" Yeah, she doesn't really believe that you're still alive. After all, that year, her child, who was already a full year old, had not survived. How could this newborn have such a tenacious life force? However, she had survived, and she was living very well. When are we going to find her? When you're better, let's go home. No matter what, I'm a newly married woman. Let's go home and cook a meal for our parents. Then, we'll be honest with them. My dad's side is better. When the time comes, as long as we can convince my mom, we'll have a wedding. A wedding, she subconsciously thought of Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi's grand and dreamy wedding in Ireland. The envy in her heart, which had stopped for a long time, overflowed again. But what if we can't convince your mom? No, we definitely can. Oh Ming was full of confidence. When the time comes, we'll tell the world that we're married. Just thinking about it made her feel sweet. Yu Lily slightly raised her lips. Who is the world? Chapter 1289. Yu Lily was caught off guard by his sweet nothings. She turned to look at him and wrinkled her nose. How mushy. Oh Ming chuckled and pulled her to sit down. Let me feel it. Where is it numb? After resting at home for another 2 days, Yu Lily felt a lot more relaxed. On the 3rd day of her period, Yu Lily suggested going to Oh Ming's parents' house. She followed Oh Ming to the hospital to remove the cast before heading over to the Oh residence. Because she hadn't informed Oh Ming beforehand, Nanny Zhang was a little surprised when she saw him. When she saw Yu Lily behind him, she was even more surprised. She called out, "Madam, young master is back." As she called out, her gaze fell on Oh Ming's hand. Is it better? Oh Ming changed his shoes and walked in. It's almost done. Just don't use too much force. And Nanny Zhang, this woman is my wife. He held Yu Lily in his arms without the slightest intention of avoiding her. Yu Lily met Nanny Zhang's surprised gaze and felt a little awkward. She called out, "Hello, Nanny Zhang." Hello, young madam. Come on in. I'll give you a new pair." Nanny Zhang was very quick. She turned around and took out a pair of pink shoes from the shoe cabinet. She had just unwrapped them and brought them to Yu Lily's feet. Yu Lily quickly took them from her and said, "I'll do it myself." "Thank you." Nanny Zhang's smile deepened. She nodded her head. "Sure." Yu Lily put on the shoes and followed Oh Ming inside. It was past 9 a.m. At that time, Qiao Ziqing was usually putting on a face mask and doing some exercise. Otherwise, she would go shopping with her friends at the spa. As for Oh Huijin, he would be in his study or at the office. That was what Yu Lily had learned from Oh Ming. Yu Lily even asked about their hobbies and interests. She was afraid that she would upset them. Indeed, after entering, Oh Ming called out, "Dad, Mom." His voice wasn't soft. Very quickly, there was a response. Steady and gentle footsteps could be heard. Oh Huijin was holding a tablet in his hand. He wore his glasses and didn't even look up from the tablet. He said, "You still know to come back." When he looked up and saw Yu Lily, he smiled amiably. You're here too. Have a seat." "Hello, Uncle," Yu Lily greeted obediently. When he heard this, Oh Huijin's smile deepened, but there was a deeper meaning behind it. "Where's Mom?" Oh Ming asked. "Let's go to the yoga room." "Go and take a look." Oh Ming nodded his head. He took Yu Lily's hand and led her inside. Yu Lily resisted. She retracted her hand and said, "Would it be inappropriate for me to go in too? Wouldn't that seem very uneducated?" There was an 80% chance that he would be scolded later. Yu Lily was a little worried, but Oh Ming quickly said, "It's fine. My mother should be in the yoga room. Don't you know yoga too? You can exchange pointers." Hearing that, Yu Lily braced herself and followed. However, as soon as he entered, he realized that Qiao Ziqing wasn't practicing yoga. Instead, she was sitting leisurely in the yoga room, watching TV on her phone. Yu Lily immediately recognized the melodramatic family drama that was being aired recently from the TV, as well as the unique voice of the female lead. Chapter 1290. Qiao Ziqing quickly switched off her phone and turned around. She was surprised to see Oh Ming and asked, "You're finally willing to come back?" "I just arrived. Have you eaten?" "I was waiting for you." Xiao Ziqing's tone wasn't pleasant. She looked Yu Lily up and down but didn't say anything. You haven't eaten yet. We had breakfast and were about to come here for lunch, Oh Ming said as he held Yu Lily's hand. Oh Ming held Yu Lily's hand. His expression was natural. He didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with what he had said. He continued, let Lily and Nanny Zhang cook together. Xiao Ziqing looked at Oh Ming with disdain and snorted. It's just a so-so. I can barely eat it. She's still better than you, Oh Ming thought to himself but didn't say it out loud. He held Yu Lily's hand and followed Xiao Ziqing out. Nanny Zhang, this girl said she wanted to help cook. Why don't you bring her along to buy groceries? Xiao Ziqing stretched her back leisurely. Nanny Zhang was surprised and asked, young madam wants to cook. That's not necessary. I'll do it. Young madam. Xiao Ziqing turned her head and looked at her strangely. Don't call her that. It won't look good if someone thinks too highly of herself. Although those words were directed at Nanny Zhang, Yu Lily's face burned even hotter than Nanny Zhang. Nanny Zhang looked at Yu Lily and hesitated. She didn't know what to say. Noticing that Yu Lily's expression was a little awkward, Oh Ming stood in front of her and said, Mom, she's my woman. Can't you be more polite when you speak to her? Xiao Ziqing laughed and looked at Yu Lily meaningfully. You don't even have this much tolerance, and you still want to be our daughter-in-law. All right, all right. Oh Huijin tried to smooth things over. Didn't you say you were going to buy groceries? Go on, Oh Ming. Let's play a good game of chess. I haven't seen you father and son play chess in a long time, Oh Ming said. Let's go to the study. She deliberately brushed past Yu Lily's shoulder as she spoke. She completely ignored Yu Lily. Yu Lily's eyes lit up. What are you talking about? When Oh Huijin heard that, he waved his hand and said, Why are you going? We're father and son talking for a while. You go and buy some groceries. You don't want to get moldy staying at home all day. Go, the three of us will go together. The three women he was referring to were Xiao Ziqing, Yu Lily, and Nanny Zhang. Upon hearing this, Xiao Ziqing naturally knew that he was trying to send her away. She was a little unwilling, but seeing her husband's determined expression, she nodded and said, Okay, let's go buy groceries together. Auntie Zhang was overwhelmed by the favor. Usually, she was the one who did all these things by herself. Not only did a little girl suddenly come to help, but even the arrogant mistress also went to help buy groceries. However, he did not dare to have any objections and quickly led them out of the door. Auntie Zhang walked straight out of the door. Xiao Ziqing stopped at the door and asked, Aren't you driving? Auntie Zhang turned her head and explained, The market is only 10 minutes from here. We'll just walk for some exercise. There's no need to drive, 10 minutes. Xiao Ziqing was a little surprised. It's that close. Why didn't I know? Is it a supermarket or a market? A market, Auntie Zhang replied. Xiao Ziqing was even more disgusted. Isn't that dirty? Chapter 1291. Is that so? Xiao Ziqing didn't believe her and looked at Nanny Zhang. Nanny Zhang nodded her head. Yes, madam. If you mind, we can go to the nearby supermarket, but there won't be much variety. We can just pick what's available. Forget it. It's too restrictive. Xiao Ziqing waved her hand. Let's go to the market. I haven't been there in a long time. Nanny Zhang felt a little helpless. She looked at Yu Lily and asked, The smell there might be a little strong. Is that okay? Of course. I also like to eat fresh ingredients. Yu Lily smiled. Her attitude was calm and amiable. Nanny Zhang's impression of the young lady improved. She nodded her head and led them to the market. Before they entered, Xiao Ziqing couldn't take it anymore. It's so noisy. It smells so bad. This is the market. If you're not used to it, you can wait here. Nanny Zhang and I will go in to buy something. We'll come out to fetch you later. Yu Lily tried to make her voice sound as gentle as possible. However, when Xiao Ziqing heard these words, they sounded more like sarcastic remarks. Xiao Ziqing's lips curled up. If you can go in, why can't I? With that, she walked in. As if in a fit of pique, she stepped into the market step by step. Xiao Ziqing was wearing a blue coat that looked very expensive, and she was wearing a pair of high heels. Yu Lily was a little shocked. She walked to her side, afraid that she would accidentally fall. But she was also afraid that she would incur Xiao Ziqing's disgust. Yu Lily walked to the side and kept an eye on Xiao Ziqing as she walked. Her movements were very subtle and difficult to detect. Nanny Zhang didn't notice, but Xiao Ziqing did. Xiao Ziqing didn't expose her. Her movements slowed down. Xiao Ziqing had only tagged along to join in the fun. She had no idea which ingredients were fresh and which weren't. Yu Lily had gradually gotten used to the smell of the market. She relaxed and helped Nanny Zhang pick out the ingredients. Nanny Zhang was a little surprised. Do you come to the market often? Yeah. I often cook for myself. I like freshness and variety. As I buy, I learn how to buy. Nanny Zhang understood. That's great. Your culinary skills must be pretty good, right? We must have a good taste later, don't you think so, madam? It's just a so-so. Xiao Ziqing turned her head proudly and her gaze landed on the vegetable stall next to her. Nanny Zhang felt a little helpless. She whispered to Yu Lily, she's just like that. Her mouth is unforgiving, but her heart isn't bad. You'll get used to it. Yu Lily knew that Nanny Zhang wasn't the only one who had said that. He nodded. I know. The three of them strolled around for a long time. After some consideration, they decided to make 5 dishes and 1 soup. Just as he was about to head out after buying the ingredients, a man in ragged clothes ran towards him. Xiao Ziqing hadn't been paying attention. When she looked up and saw who it was, she was so frightened that she jumped up. At the same time, she let out a loud roar. Yu Lily had been paying attention to her high heels all the time, afraid that she would drop them. She didn't expect Xiao Ziqing to suddenly act like this. Seeing that she lost her balance and fell to the side, he subconsciously went up to hold her. Chapter 1292. With that, the two of them fell down one after the other, as there was no gravity to support them. Xiao Ziqing sat on the ground, but Yu Lily wasn't so lucky. Not only was her own body weight affected, but the force of gravity that Xiao Ziqing had pulled her down was no joke either. Her whole body fell flat on the ground, and there was a puddle of dirty water on the ground. Many people looked over. When Xiao Ziqing saw that, she exclaimed, Lily. She quickly got up and pulled Yu Lily up. Nanny Zhang was also frightened. Who knew that such a thing would happen? But she was still carrying a lot of fresh ingredients that she had just bought, and she couldn't let go of them. Yu Lily looked at Xiao Ziqing, but her eyes weren't on her. Instead, she was looking behind Xiao Ziqing. The person who had just scared Xiao Ziqing was hiding in the crowd and looking over. As if sensing Yu Lily's gaze, he turned around and ran away in fear. This time, Yu Lily could clearly see the person's appearance. He was short, and his clothes were old and tattered. No one was too close to him, and some even avoided him in disgust. He looked like a beggar. Xiao Ziqing pulled Yu Lily up and took a closer look. She saw the obvious black patch in front of Yu Lily and quickly asked, "Are you okay?" Yu Lily shook her head and looked away. When she saw the mess on her body, she laughed at herself and said, "What a bad trip." Qiao Ziqing didn't say anything. When she saw everyone looking at her, she pulled Yu Lily and said, "I was about to fall. Why did you come? Aren't you stupid?" In the end, the two of us fell together. How embarrassing. As he spoke, he immediately pulled Yu Lily toward the exit. Yu Lily turned her head to look at the mess on the ground. The ingredients that she had just picked up were all ruined. What a waste. Qiao Ziqing looked at her with disgust and said, "It's good enough that you can take care of yourself. Why bother with that? Just get Nanny Zhang to buy the ingredients later. Let's go back." Yu Lily turned her head and saw Qiao Ziqing's back. Her eyes darkened, and a phrase that she had heard a lot recently came to her mind. Actually, she was just sharp-tongued. When they got home, Yu Lily asked Qiao Ziqing not to disturb O Ming or his father. She asked Qiao Ziqing to take her to O Ming's room to take a shower. She found a loose shirt and put it on before coming out to dry her hair. However, she didn't expect to see a pink dress on O Ming's bed when she walked out. The thickness was just right for this season. But, pink. O Ming knew that she didn't like pink. Therefore, this set of clothes shouldn't have been prepared by O Ming. Qiao Ziqing was the only one left. Yu Lily's eyes darkened. She went forward and took off the clothes. She drew on the clothes and looked at the brand. It was a very good brand. It was definitely not bought at the last minute. But was Qiao Ziqing going to leave this kind of clothing at home, ready to wear at any time? How could this be? Just as Yu Lily was thinking, there was a knock on the door, and it opened. Qiao Ziqing glanced at it and snorted coldly. "You got lucky. Hurry up and change. We're waiting for you to help in the kitchen." Dash. Chapter 1293. After saying that, Qiao Ziqing quickly left. When Yu Lily heard that, she quickly changed her clothes, but the clothes she was wearing were unexpectedly suitable. Could it be that it was originally prepared for Enchanting? Otherwise, why would O Ming's mother suddenly prepare clothes for a young girl? From the looks of it, it couldn't have been prepared for herself, let alone for Yu Lily. Yu Lily racked her brains and could only think of one possibility. She felt a little soured in her heart, but she still dried her hair and went to the kitchen. The clothes that Yu Lily was wearing were just right for the occasion. It was a very youthful style. When Nanny Zhang saw Yu Lily dressed like that, her eyes lit up. But she quickly thought of another important point and said, "Why are you still here? You haven't dried your hair yet. You have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of my young master. Let me get you a hairdryer." "No need. It'll be dry in a while." "Nanny Zhang, let me help you." Qiao Ziqing looked over and said, "Why are you so delicate? You're not the daughter of a big family, and you're not cold. Come and help wash the vegetables." Yu Lily nodded her head and walked over. She immediately took over the hairdryer. Nanny Zhang wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't and continued cooking. Yu Lily's culinary skills were excellent. Throughout the meal, Nanny Zhang looked at and smelled Yu Lily's dishes. She couldn't stop praising her. As for Qiao Ziqing, she didn't pay much attention to it and didn't say anything. She continued to help in name, but in reality, she was just helping out. When the dishes were placed on the dining table, Qiao Ziqing went to the study to call the father and son out. The father and son weren't playing chess. They were just sitting in front of the chessboard and talking. Qiao Ziqing had expected this and didn't expose them. When they came out, O Ming saw Yu Lily's outfit. He was surprised and asked, why did you change? Nanny Zhang was about to speak when she saw Yu Lily gently shaking her head. When Ming saw that, he vaguely understood something. He planned to ask her about it later that night. He nodded his head and said, "It looks good." Yu Lily forced a smile and helped them get their food. Finally, when everyone from the family had left the table, Yu Lily sat down beside Ming. Auntie Zhang was also invited to sit at the dining table. It looked very harmonious. Lily's culinary skills are really good. She looks, smells, and tastes great. She cooks even better than I do. Sir and Madam, please have a taste, Nanny Zhang said enthusiastically. Huijin chuckled and said, I smelled it the moment I came out. I thought your culinary skills had improved again, but it turns out the chef has changed. Such a compliment made Yu Lily a little embarrassed. She said, Thank you, Uncle. You still call me Uncle. Huijin's expression stiffened, but he did not show any anger. He corrected her, We are family. How should you address them? Yu Lily was shocked and turned to look at Ming. However, Ming was busy eating, as if he hadn't heard Huijin's words. Yu Lily was at a loss. She reached out and grabbed his thigh. In a low voice, she asked, Did you tell him? They're not blind. Ming gently touched the rings on his finger. Call me Daddy. Such a sudden change made Yu Lily somewhat at a loss. He had thought that it would take a long time, or at least there would be a foreshadowing or something. Chapter 1294. For a moment, Yu Lily's face turned red. Faced with the gazes of everyone around her, Yu Lily's face grew hotter. She whispered, Dad, louder. Who are you addressing with that soft voice? Ming's eyes were filled with ridicule, but the depths of his peach blossom eyes were filled with gentleness and endless affection. Yu Lily was a little embarrassed by his gaze. She reached out and pinched his thigh. Ming avoided it and asked, Dad, did you hear me? Huijin could tell that his son was up to no good. He shook his head and laughed. I didn't hear you. Louder. What did you call me? Yu Lily replied, Dad. Her voice wasn't soft, but her face was getting redder and redder. As he spoke, he did not forget to glance in Qiao Ziqing's direction. He was afraid that this mother-in-law would suddenly make a sound and mock him. Fortunately, Qiao Ziqing didn't make a sound. She looked at Yu Lily and seemed to be waiting for something. Yu Lily didn't know if it was an illusion, but the fear in her heart gradually dissipated. She weakly called out, Mom. Qiao Ziqing pursed her lips. She didn't know if it was out of disdain or something else. She raised her chopsticks and said, Let's eat. Huijin chuckled and said, You. Qiao Ziqing was a little unhappy. She frowned and said, What about me? Eat your food. Ming reached out his chopsticks and picked some food for Yu Lily. He whispered into her ear, Dear, hurry up and eat. I told Dad that I'll be resting at home tonight. I won't be going back. Yu Lily felt her body go limp. Yu Lily felt that she was very impressive to be able to stay in the household, but Ming had actually asked her to stay the night. That was too difficult. What shocked Yu Lily the most was that Qiao Ziqing had accepted it. She had accepted the way she was addressed without any objection or sarcasm. Did that mean that Ming's mother was slowly beginning to accept her? When Yu Lily thought of that possibility, she felt a sense of joy rise in her heart. It gradually spread and sublimated. Yu Lily was still in a daze until the end of the meal. After the meal, Yu Lily sat at the dining table and waited to help clear the table. When Qiao Ziqing stood up, Yu Lily felt that she shouldn't be sitting there. She didn't know what to do. Ming noticed her embarrassment and whispered, What's wrong? Are you stupid? Yu Lily looked up at him blankly. Oh Ming chuckled and pulled her into the room. Once she entered the room, Yu Lily relaxed without the stares of the people around her. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I thought your parents didn't know. Now that you've done this, what have I become? Doesn't this mean that I'm lying to them? You're not the only one, and this was all my idea, Oh Ming said nonchalantly. When Yu Lily saw Oh Ming's reaction, she became even more annoyed. She yelled, but that won't do either. I even pretended in front of your mother. Chapter 1295. When Yu Lily heard Oh Ming's words, she let out a sigh of relief. She rolled her eyes and glared at Oh Ming. You scared me to death. Oh Ming's lips curled up, and the smile in his eyes deepened. In fact, the first half was the truth. However, Oh Ming didn't say anything more. He turned to look at her and said, My mom likes to practice yoga in the afternoon. Go and play with her. Don't you know how to do it too? Play with Oh Ming's mother. Yu Lily felt a little strange. She looked at Oh Ming and asked, Can I? Your mom hates me so much. If I go and play with her in the afternoon, will I get scolded? That was what Yu Lily was most afraid of and most worried about at the moment. How could that be? Oh Ming looked at Yu Lily with a deep gaze. He smiled and said in a low voice, Don't think too much. Scaring yourself is the scariest thing. If you talk to mom nicely, she won't make things difficult for you. Then, when I see your mom later, what should I call her? Do I really have to call her mom? Yu Lily frowned. The thought of Oh Ming's mother scolding her for this made her feel particularly uncomfortable. Hesitantly, she whispered, Will your mother think that I'm being overly sentimental? What if she scolds me? Yu Lily asked. No, my mother isn't as scary as you think. Oh Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How much psychological trauma did my mother leave in you? Don't be afraid. Just think of my mother as me. In fact, sometimes my words are a little harsh. It's more than just a little harsh. It's very harsh. Yu Lily pouted her lips and muttered. Oh Ming didn't know what to say at that moment. He pinched her face and said, Go. The yoga room is where I took you just now. Remember not to be too reserved, and don't be too deliberate. My mother just has a bad mouth. With that, he couldn't help but kiss her on the lips and whisper, My mother is also your mother. In the future, you have to slowly learn to change the way you address her. When you see Dad later, you should also call him Dad. Do you understand? Yu Lily found it hard to accept. This development seemed a little too fast. When she saw his expression, Yu Lily had no choice but to nod her head and say, Got it. What are you going to do now? I'm going out with Dad. I won't be home in the afternoon. You stay at home with Mom. You have to get along well. If Mom makes things difficult for you, give me a call. I'll be right back. Yu Lily's heart calmed down a little. She nodded her head and said, I got it. You can go back to your work. Well, you go first. Oh Ming gave her a gentle push. Yu Lily was a little scared, but she still walked out without looking back. When they arrived at the yoga room, Xiao Ziqing was really doing yoga inside. There was a radio in front of him, playing beautiful music and stories. The volume of the beautiful female voice was just right, and the pace of the story was also very touching. Yu Lily stood in front of the yoga room and gently knocked on the door. Can I come in? In front of Xiao Ziqing was a large mirror. There was nothing much in the yoga room, but there were a lot of mirrors. Xiao Ziqing had seen her a long time ago, but when she saw the hesitant look on her face, she did not say anything. Hearing her voice, Xiao Ziqing said nonchalantly, come in then. Dash. Chapter 1296. When Yulili heard Xiao Ziqing's impatient tone, her heart trembled. But soon, he walked in and struck up a conversation. Are you doing yoga? Xiao Ziqing glanced at her and asked, can't you tell? I'm dancing ballet. Yulili was stunned. She never expected to get such an answer. She stared at her with a face full of question marks. Ah. This movement, this posture, this waist, this appearance, it was clearly yoga. Is ballet like this? Xiao Ziqing found it funny when she saw Yulili's reaction. She asked, did O Ming ask you to come here? Indeed, it was O Ming who had called her. But if she admitted it, wouldn't it show that she was insincere? Seeing the look on Yulili's face, Xiao Ziqing knew she was right. He rolled his eyes at her and grumbled, I knew it. When this girl saw him, she was like a mouse that had seen a cat. She couldn't wait to run away, so why would she send herself to his doorstep? Xiao Ziqing decided to ignore her. She listened to the radio and slowly got to work. Yulili watched from the side as she did her yoga. After a long time, she said, thank you for the dress. It suits me very well. Although it was very likely that this was originally intended for Enchanting. But at this time, she still benefited from it, and this thank you should be given. Xiao Ziqing cast a sidelong glance at her and unceremoniously exposed her. Don't try to find something to talk about. If you have nothing to do, let's get up and exercise together. That way, you won't fall the next time you encounter something like this. When Yulili heard that, she thought for a moment before taking off her shoes and stepping onto the yoga mat in front of Xiao Ziqing. Kneeling down, the posture was standard. The yoga mat was so big that it took up half of the yoga room. Yulili's clothes were relatively loose. It was a sporty outfit. Currently, Xiao Ziqing was performing a classic yoga pose, which was a little difficult. Yulili usually did yoga as a hobby. She exercised her body when she was free, so her movements were not very standard. Seeing Xiao Ziqing's reaction, Yulili didn't dare to embarrass herself. Xiao Ziqing glanced at her and asked, what are you doing? Do you have to pray before exercising? The obvious teasing made Yulili blush. She replied, I don't really know how. If you don't know, then learn. Everything has to be learned. Do you think you'll learn it just by being in a daze? Xiao Ziqing's movements were as smooth as flowing water, slow and unhurried, but the curves of her movements were very pleasing to the eye. No wonder Xiao Ziqing's figure was so well maintained. With such a soft waist and such standard movements, it was obvious that she wasn't an amateur. Yulili imitated Xiao Ziqing's movements and began to move slowly. However, before Xiao Ziqing could finish her set, she couldn't help but say, straighten your chest. Do you have a hump? Yulili's heart skipped a beat. She complained in her heart, but she immediately did as she was told. Raise your hands high. Can't you lift it because you haven't eaten? Yulili, are there treasures on the ground? Why are you lowering your head? Raise your chin. Yulili, Xiao Ziqing was a little strict. More importantly, she was very blunt with her words. But, for the entire afternoon, she was indeed teaching Yulili. Yulili practiced for about an hour before Xiao Ziqing stopped. She said, you're indeed an amateur. All right, come back tomorrow. Tomorrow. Yulili's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help but feel happy. Chapter 1297. As soon as that thought popped up, Yulili immediately felt that she was overthinking things. Discarding this thought, Zhang Xian nodded and hurriedly followed behind. Without looking back, Chao Ziqing walked out of the yoga room and asked, "What do you usually do in the afternoon?" Yu Lily didn't dare to walk too fast or too slowly. She followed closely behind Chao Ziqing, looking a little uneasy. When she heard the question, Yu Lily thought for a moment before replying, "I'll go to work. I usually go to work half a day." "What about the weekends?" "On the weekends, I'll draw at home. Painting." Chao Ziqing looked a little surprised. Then, a look of realization dawned on her face. "Oh yes, you draw comics, right? How can you stay at home all day? You don't know how to do yoga, and you don't even exercise on the weekends. What's the difference between you and a salted fish?" Chao Ziqing had a look of disdain on her face as she walked out and headed to the changing room to change her clothes. Yu Lily was a little embarrassed and tried to defend herself. "Actually, I go out for a jog every morning." "Oh," Chao Ziqing replied and didn't say anything else. Yu Lily was a little embarrassed and didn't know what to say. Chao Ziqing walked into the changing room. She glanced at Yu Lily and said, "Go get changed. Let's go out for a walk." Yu Lily was stunned, and her heartbeat suddenly accelerated. "Shall we go for a walk together? With Chao Ziqing alone? What are you waiting for? If you don't want to go, I'll wait for you." Chao Ziqing frowned and waved her hand. Yu Lily quickly nodded. "I'll go right away. Wait for me." Just as she turned around, she suddenly remembered. "I didn't bring any clothes with me." Chao Ziqing turned her head and gave Yu Lily a strange look. "Didn't you go into the walk-in closet?" His words made Yu Lily blink, then she turned around and went back to her room. Her room was naturally Oh Ming's room. She really didn't come into the cloakroom. She just went through the wardrobe at the door and took out one of Oh Ming's clothes to wear. The walk-in closet was next to the bathroom. Yu Lily turned around and saw Oh Ming's closet. When he opened them, he saw that they were all men's clothes. There was a wardrobe inside the men's wardrobe. Yu Lily opened it and saw a dazzling array of clothes hanging there. There were many colors, but most of them were red. She looked at the measurements and found that they were all her measurements. Not many, but at least 7 or 8. This was prepared by Oh Ming. She originally thought that the pink dress she was wearing had been prepared by Chao Ziqing for Enchanting. Now that she thought about it, Enchanting was a northerner and was much taller than her, so it couldn't be that. The resistance deep in Yu Lily's heart suddenly disappeared. After he changed his clothes, he opened the door and saw Chao Ziqing coming out of the room at the same time. Chao Ziqing glanced at the red dress she was wearing. It was hard to tell whether it was a compliment or a sarcasm. She muttered softly, "It looks pretty good." Yu Lily touched her head, lowered her head, and did not speak. "Let's go." Chao Ziqing put on her handbag and looked like a rich lady. She said, "I asked a few friends to have tea together. I heard that my son brought a woman back, so I wanted to meet you. Don't embarrass me." Hearing that, Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat. Is she going to bring me to meet someone? Chapter 1298. When Yu Lily thought about that, she felt that she was overthinking things. Maybe Oh Ming's mother was just bored, so she took me out to see the world. But at that moment, Yu Lily didn't dare to say anything else. She followed them into the garage. "Do you know how to drive?" Chao Ziqing suddenly asked. Yu Lily immediately replied, "Yes." "Well, you drive." After Chao Ziqing unlocked the car door, she threw the key to Yu Lily and sat in the front passenger seat. Yu Lily couldn't figure out what this woman was trying to do. It was said that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. Yu Lily finally understood the true meaning of that sentence. Yu Lily didn't dare to delay any further. She drove to a high-class leisure place that Chao Ziqing had designated. She parked the car and followed Chao Ziqing upstairs. When they entered the private room, there were 2 or 3 rich women in good shape. Even their skin looked very good. From their appearance, they didn't look much different from Chao Ziqing. If Yu Lily didn't know their real age, she would probably think that they were in their 30s. "You're here. Hey, who is this girl?" One of the rich women was a little surprised. "Why did you bring a girl today?" Chao Ziqing didn't answer. She turned around and sat down in front of them. The waiter served tea. Chao Ziqing slowly took a sip and introduced her to Yu Lily. "This is Li Pingting, my good friend." She was the rich woman who had just spoken to Chao Ziqing. Yu Lily nodded and smiled politely. "Hello, Auntie Li, this is also my good friend, Chao Meng." "Hello, Auntie Chao," Yu Lily greeted politely. "I am Zhuang Yunhua." Another woman introduced herself and looked at Yu Lily with a smile. "You must be Ziqing's daughter-in-law. You're pretty good to be able to deal with Ming." Daughter-in-law, those 3 words made Yu Lily feel a little guilty. She smiled awkwardly and subconsciously looked at Chao Ziqing. Chao Ziqing put down the teacup and said, "She's afraid of strangers." "By the way, Yunmeng, is your daughter's wedding day coming soon?" Yu Lily knew that this was a change of topic. She quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Zhuang Yunhua quickly started chatting with Chao Ziqing. The girls sat together, drinking tea and chatting. The laughter grew louder and louder, and no one paid any attention to Yu Lily. The sisters were bored, so they set up a table to play mahjong. Yu Lily would occasionally help pour tea. She was very quiet. However, from the beginning to the end, Chao Ziqing did not introduce them to the girl she had brought with her. Li Pingting was a short-tempered person. Her original patience was almost worn out. Finally, she shouted, "Ziqing, why isn't your daughter-in-law saying anything? What's her name?" Li Pingting wasn't the only one who felt that way. Even the other 2 sisters felt that Yu Lily was too low-key. Hearing the word daughter-in-law again made Yu Lily even more embarrassed. Was she now Mother O's daughter-in-law? Chao Ziqing probably wouldn't admit it. Unexpectedly, Chao Ziqing only gave Yu Lily a sidelong glance and leisurely said, "Who knows? Maybe she's looking down on you, Dongfeng." A mahjong tile hit, and Yu Lily's heart was also shocked, and then it was full of waves. Chapter 1299. Yu Lily looked at Chao Ziqing with her eyes wide open in disbelief. Chao Ziqing didn't look at her. She continued to chat with her friends and play cards. Yu Lily was a little happy, but she quickly waved her hands and explained, "No. How could I be like that?" "Then why didn't you say anything? You've been here for so long, and I don't even know what your name is," Chao Meng said. "My name is Yu Lily, Auntie Chao." "Ah. Yu Lily, why does this name sound so familiar? No wonder you look so familiar. You're the mistress who caused a ruckus with Ming some time ago, right?" Zhuang Yunhua's words were not at all tactful. It was so straightforward that it made Yu Lily feel a little awkward. "How can you say that?" Li Pingting pushed Zhuang Yunhua and rebuked her. But it was obvious that they already knew who Yu Lily was. "She's not a mistress now. Since she's been brought here, she must be married to Ming," Chao Meng said. "But why haven't I heard any news? Is it a secret marriage?" Yu Lily had expected to see contempt, disdain, or something else on their faces. But it seemed that Yu Lily was gauging the heart of a gentleman with her own mean measure. These women, who were obviously about the same age as Chao Ziqing, were just gossiping on the side. They had no intention of targeting her. Just as Lily was about to answer, she was interrupted. I guess so. Young people nowadays like to play this game. To put it nicely, it's low-key, but in fact, they love to cause trouble. Who doesn't get married at some point? Why do they have to settle everything before they have a wedding? Hey, what's your name? Lily, is it? Was it Ming's idea for you to do this? Zhuang Yunhua looked as if she had seen through everything. She clicked her tongue and shook her head. It's not that I want to say this, but Ming, that rascal, has been especially good at causing trouble since he was young. His parents were so angry. I used to want to marry my daughter to that rascal. Ha ha ha. Later, I was frightened by that rascal, so I gave up on that idea. That's right, Xiao Meng chimed in. It's not that other girls don't like Ming, but no one can stand his temper. You're really something. You're able to stand his temper. It's true love. It could be seen that these Andes had known Chao Ziqing for a long time. Their relationship was so good that everyone just laughed it off. Hearing that, Lily tried to recall what Ming looked like. Thinking of Ming's unbearable temper and poisonous mouth, she smiled and said, I've known Ming for many years. I met him when I was 17. After that, we separated for a period of time. She looked at them and said, later, I went to Beijing. Something happened, and Ming brought me back. It was a simple sentence, but there was an indescribable sorrow in it. Fortunately, she did not succeed in dying. Otherwise, this day wouldn't have come. Only after surviving the rain could one see the rainbow. No matter what, Woldo's son finally has someone who wants him. Zhuang Yunhua waved her hand and said, Come on, let's play cards together. Get your mother to step aside. Chapter 1300. Ha! Lily was suddenly called. She looked at Zhuang Yunhua and stammered, You do it. I don't want to fight anymore. These old women have bad luck and always say that I'm bullying them. Let them see what good luck is. Chao Ziqing stood up, pulled Lily down, and pressed her down. You do it. Seeing Lily's confused expression, she asked, Why are you standing there? Don't you know how to play? Lily thought for a moment and said, I think so. If you do, then so be it. If you don't, then so be it. What do you mean by probably? Chao Ziqing asked from behind. Lily thought about it again and asked, Do I want to win or lose? Her voice was very soft as she turned to look at Chao Ziqing. Lily's eyes were deep and dark brown. When Chao Ziqing saw her eyes, her beautiful and exquisite eyebrows rose slightly. In a loud voice, she said, Kill them all. Hearing Chao Ziqing's words, the women behind her were in an uproar. With a look of disdain, they mocked, Can you do it? Don't brag. Just because your luck is good doesn't mean your daughter-in-law's luck is good. Your daughter-in-law is so young. I don't think she knows how to play. When we win all your money later, don't say that we bullied the young. Being provoked, Chao Ziqing became even more excited. She gently pushed Lily and said, Did you hear that? Don't embarrass me. You have to beat them. Okay. With the heavy burden on her shoulders, Lily immediately perked up. Looking at the cards in front of her, Lily looked at them and played a seemingly useless 3 dice. Draw, someone shouted. With that draw, the rest of her luck seemed to be running away. Every time Lily played a card, she was either knocked or hit. This round was a terrible loss. You want to beat us like that? Ha ha ha. Ziqing, you're bragging too much. Chao Ziqing glanced at them and said nonchalantly, This is just the beginning. What's the rush? Yu Lily was a little embarrassed. She turned to look at Xiao Ziqing and said, "Why don't you do it? Continue." Xiao Ziqing sat down at the spot where Yu Lily had been sitting. Yu Lily had to bite the bullet and continue playing. In the next 2 or 3 games, Yu Lily lost miserably. The most terrifying round was in the 3rd round, when the cannon fired 3 times. The other 3 families were all laughing happily, but they didn't forget to provoke Xiao Ziqing, saying, "Aren't you talking big? It seems like your daughter-in-law really doesn't know anything. Why don't you do it yourself? Don't lose too badly." Xiao Ziqing, who was drinking her coffee, pouted her lips and said in disdain, "You guys are just lucky." The 3 women burst into laughter and said, "This time, you can draw the cards first. Don't say that we, as your elders, are bullying you." Yu Lily was also a little embarrassed. Losing money was not a big deal, but losing face was a big deal. He nodded and said, "Thank you, Auntie." The 3 women laughed even more happily, but soon, they couldn't laugh anymore. In the 4th round, Yu Lily was in a daze. Everyone was stunned and couldn't believe it. Impossible. Her luck is too good. It was also the first time that Yu Lily had caught a daze. Her heart was bursting with joy. Just as she was about to say a few humble words, she heard Xiao Ziqing say, "It's all because you guys went easy on me. Look, isn't this luck?" You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.